Good evening. It's February 5th, 2025, and welcome to the Warrant Committee. Karen, could you call the roll?
Sure. We have Tom Caldwell, Steve Rhines, Lori Connolly, Liz Dillon, Jay Fundling, Andrew Coe, Macy Lee, Peter Mon, Julia Maxwell, Brian McGuire, and on Zoom we have Ron Sia and Judy Steele. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's get the meeting going. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. We've got a great in-person presence, so thank you. Just to start out, there was a school committee, finance committee meeting this morning. I'd like to thank all the members of the Warrant Committee who attended this morning. I appreciate that very much. Appreciate the information the school's sharing with us and the time you take out of your personal schedules in the morning to head over there. So I wanted to thank the members of the committee who were there. So tonight, in terms of the meeting, we heard from we had a long meeting with the planning board. We reviewed some of the 3 articles, or essentially 2, but we've reviewed the 3 articles that they have prepared for the special town meeting in a couple of weeks. And I'd like to have a conversation about these tonight. Maybe not so much the overlay. Surely we can entertain some conversation about that if the members would like. But I'd like to really start off with some of the big issues. And I think it's that the ADU and the site plan approval. And I can talk a little bit more about that. But there's one issue that's come up, and it's how we're addressing restaurants and other establishments in the town with the site plan. And there's a little higher scrutiny in the site plan for restaurants. And I'd kind of like to have a discussion about that and kind of see how we feel about the different standards applied. And of course, the planning board taking a little stricter stance with some of these commercial establishments in the business districts and why they're doing it. Are they good? Are they bad? So I'd like to start maybe the conversation off about that. I think it's a big issue. I know I've discussed this with Jay and some other members. Liz.
Point of.
Go ahead, Jay.
I was just wondering if you could remind everyone, including anyone who wasn't here on Monday, what the issue with restaurants is.
I would appreciate that.
Okay, actually, Jay, why don't you tell us?
Okay.
Articulate the reasons.
I'm just going to stick with just the facts for now, because since I cut off Liz. My understanding is
It's okay.
that currently, if a commercial business has an external change, they have to undergo a site plan review. This site plan review change does lots of things, including making the whole process more transparent, more well laid out, etc. But one other thing it does is it says, and I'm translating into English, if you make a change to a restaurant and it's only an internal change, not an external change, you still have to go through the site plan review. Whereas previously, if you changed any business only on the inside, you didn't have to. So it's expanding the times that a restaurant would need a site plan review.
Okay.
Did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, you mentioned
Peter.
yesterday, seems like yesterday, two nights ago, Jay, and I think one of the things that didn't come up is, for a hat shop or a coffee shop, maybe coffee shop if they're serving meals, restaurants have open fires. They have gas lines. They have electrical units, and if they're making moves, even location of changing the bar, you've got egress issues. So I think the overall look, even though it wasn't spelled out what those issues would be, I think they would all come up in the overall process that was laid out by the planning board. I just think that might have been one of the reasons, because I did think about it after you mentioned it. There's a lot more moving parts. There's a lot more safety issues, basically with open flames in the kitchen and all of that. That has to be adjusted. It's not like just sort of picking up the stove and moving it over here. You've got a bunch of other things that need to be done. Just my thoughts on that.
Liz.
I have a similar thing to say, but with respect to the ADUs.
being added to the site plan review. Because it seems as though, to me, most of the site plan review regarded commercial businesses. And when we were talking with Meredith Hall, the chair of the planning board, 2 days ago, a lot of it was, well, this wouldn't be applied to ADUs for all of those, was like sections E, F, and G that I cited during that meeting. And so I'd also like to, if that's okay with you, talk as well about the ADUs being included as well as the restaurant.
Yeah. I want to talk about the
But
restaurant.
the restaurants is fine. I just wanted to point out that that's another thing I was thinking about.
No, of course. But like I said, the restaurant issue, I think that was kind of really what's been highlighted to me. Peter, I appreciate those comments. Anyone else want to, Ryan?
Let's just say something quick. I think the fact that, it's a town, it's a very suburban town, residents live here. I would think, somebody could alter their, to your point, they could make a restaurant into more of a bar, something like that, or they could change the feel of it. And I think that you might want to have some oversight on that. The neighbors might want to know that. They might want to have some input into that, so I would think that would be something you'd want.
Yes.
I have a question, and I clearly was not present for the meeting on Monday. With regards to the, what's the word, inspection that was used when there's internal changes in the bar, does the ABCC also get involved? Because if they, for example, expand the bar, the liquor license also includes capacity of the bar. That's my recollection, in terms of my background. So the governance by the town, is that on top of what ABCC would also have to do? Because if they expand, for example, the bar, right, the liquor license would also have to change as well.
I think it was clear that again, I'm not speaking for the town, but I believe that they basically said that they would have to get approval regardless from ABC
Okay.
of anything that they were going to put forth.
And that's how I interpret the situation. It's just another level with the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission.
Okay.
Anyone else want to? Lori?
Yeah, I actually rewatched the meeting because I knew that was a topic, and you said, Jay, that you wanted to talk about it today. And there were a number of concerns that both Meredith and Cheryl, I think Jim even commented, as well as Maggie, about the fact that Cheryl used the example of the fruit center. The plate was it was an operating business. The hours were condensed. They did have a liquor license, but now this is a restaurant. They've expanded with inside. They're gonna have 100 seats. They're gonna go from 6 hours a day to longer, potentially 10, 11, 12. Who knows what time they're gonna get it shut down. But without the neighbor input or having a public hearing, the neighbors wouldn't know anything about it if they didn't go through the site plan approval. And they talked about the number of people causing a greater impact. So the plate might have had people during the day when people are not home, but at night, they're gonna be there longer. There's gonna be more noise. There's just gonna be more traffic. If it's a bar and they're open till 10 or 11, that creates a whole nother scenario. It's noise, the hours, the valet, whether it's takeout, like a lot of things will affect it. The fruit center is actually in a residential district. That's another issue. It's spread out amongst the neighbors, all of the ancillary issues that come up as a result of having a big restaurant right there are not just going to affect the surrounding area, but it's going to affect further streets into East Milton. The loading zones are an issue. The vehicles that used to bring product to the plate were smaller. They're now going to be a lot bigger if you're bringing kegs in, if you're bringing in cases of beer, cases of wine. It's just different, a coffee shop versus a major restaurant. The other issue, I think, to consider is there another business besides a restaurant, a bar, or an entertainment venue that would have hours open that late into the evening? Most other businesses shut down earlier, so the impact is less. But if you're going to have a place of business that's open until 10 o'clock at night, maybe we should be adding another caveat than taking out restaurants. I think all of those reasons. And I mean, I don't know who watched all of the planning board meetings when they were discussing this, but it was not done in one night. Because I listened to many nights of painstaking zoning discussions with the group. And I think the fact that the planning board, unanimously voted for it, town council has approved it, says something. So I would fully support the language as written.
Jay?
I think you brought up a great example, the Fruit Center. Now, there are some reasons why the Fruit Center project is covered under the current bylaw. One is because they're in a residential district, as you said. Another is because they are making external changes. So, but that's still think of an example very much like that, but in a business district and only making internal changes. But let's say they're changing their hours. Let's say even though they're not changing the outside, let's say they're expanding their seating in some way. I think we still want to ask, okay, what's right? Because right now, it's been multiple days. You're right. It's been a long process. The other restaurant closed, I'm not sure when, in the summer, in the fall. So we've had a restaurant space that's been sitting empty and will be sitting empty for several more months. And is that what we want as a town? It's a balance. It's a balance of making sure everything's done right as much as we can on one hand and supporting businesses on the other hand. So if you got a restaurant switching out for another restaurant, Indiana Jones swapping one for the other, do we want them to have to go through this process, or do we want to make it easier for a new restaurant to come in? I think that's the question, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but it's a trade-off. And did I have another point to make? It's just, not all. A lot of people say, let's have more commercial development in this town, let's have more commercial taxes in this town. Let's not make it too onerous. And as far as it being approved unanimously by the planning board, I like the planning board, I like every member that I know, I trust them, but the planning board voted to give the planning board more responsibility. So, great, I think they have the best intentions at heart, but we are an outside force looking at them and saying, should the planning board have more responsibility or not? So I'm not 100% on one side or other, but I think there is a trade-off.
That's a lot to unpack. What I would, for me, there was things that was missing in there that I heard, things that I thought were good. They were putting some better handles around the process, right? They have provisions in there that would trigger, like the ZBA, for example, right? If you put a bar in there, now they need more oversight. That's a good thing, right? You want more folks that are trained to do that, to look at it. I think, things that were challenging for me were consistency of planning no consistency around signage. I didn't see anything with signage in there. That's a big deal. If you think at Sovereign Bank, when they were pushing new lighting in there recently in East Milton, it varies from the rest of the lighting that's in the town. Probably has some consistency there. You go to areas like Lexington or Hingham, there's consistency in their area there. I thought that was that. But I'm encouraged that they're making steps in the right direction to do the right thing. They've reviewed it and they're approving it. It's, as it stands, it is editable, right? We can always bring it back and work on it. I think this is a good first step. It's more than they've had now, and I would support it. I think hopefully they'll continue to add oversight to these ideas. I think it's necessary, personally. Like member mentioned down there about valet parking, right? We know that there's been some times where that's been a miss at some of the locations. Enforcement is always something to be good there, so that's what I got.
Thank you, Steve. Judy.
I just wanted to make a quick comment to Steve's point of signage for any business. We do have a sign review committee in town, and to the best of my knowledge, that's what they do. They review signage for compliance. There's so much. It can only be a certain size. It can not be LED lit all night. And I don't know the process well enough to go further, but I think there's a balance and check on signs already in place. And then to another member's point of, would it delay a restaurant from going in just to have an extra layer here? I think when anyone is in a restaurant business and sort of goes big, other than your coffee shop with 2 little cafe tables in it, they're already well aware of the processes to have a big establishment. They know that there's going to be, they're used to it. They know that there are, things in place that they have to address, and, it all comes together. It may be faster to put in a little coffee shop with 2 cafe tables, and the process may be a little bit longer, but I don't think it deters anyone. The current applicant to take the space at the fruit center is not backing away just because it had one permit lapse. They're, already on that. They're committed to having that space and working with the town to make it the best space possible for everyone, for customers, for them, and for the neighborhood. So I would say I am in favor of keeping this layer for restaurants. There is, it's a unique business. It's not a shopping mall that closes at 9 o'clock every night. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Just like to thank Jay for thinking about getting more restaurants into the town. We could use it. I've been here since forever, and there were no restaurants. There was, I think it was Villa Rosa. I was sorry to see that go.
Peter, you never went to the Milton Hill House?
Oh, yeah, I did. With my aunt took me there when I was a kid. It's been there for 1,000 years.
I went to a Kiwanis meeting there
did,
when I
yeah.
was a kid. Yeah.
But I'd like to see more restaurants in there. It's, but as an investment person, if anybody was saying to me, I'm thinking of opening a restaurant, I'd say run the other way. They last about 3 years, a good one. And the margins are small, and the fact that anybody opens a restaurant, to me, I'm cheering them on, and I'll go there and eat, but especially here in Milton. But it's not a great business for a lot of people, most of people,
No,
in my opinion.
it's very difficult, and I agree. And we have benefited, I think, from an expansion of restaurants in town. There's so many people who enjoy them. I know so many people professionally who travel to Milton now to go to our restaurants, and they give them very high marks. I want to ask someone, because Lori mentioned it, I certainly watched them. Did anybody watch the planning board meetings concerning the fruit center?
Yes.
Yep. Would anyone just like to share kind of what they saw, or from the citizens who showed up there? I mean, it's all recorded. I mean, you can go back and watch them, so it's on records. But if you want to.
So some of the things that were summarized were that there were some expression of concerns about the fact that, as Lori mentioned, it is in a residential district. So the fruit center is a prior non-conforming use. And the plate had, I believe, Lori can correct me, but they had a special permit, I think. And so there's always been some kind of a restaurant there.
They had a liquor license.
And they have a liquor license. And so the concern of, sort of as Lori mentioned, is that some people felt like this was an expansion of what the plate was. And so some of the issues that people raised were, as Lori mentioned, concerns about additional noise. There's some concern about the patio and having windows open and having additional noise in the residential district. Some concern about there being drinking on the patio during the hours where the hallway is open and the stores upstairs, so the children's shop and the Q and the framing store and all of those are open. So in particular, the children's toy store with people drinking was a concern. Traffic was something that people had raised, and parking around there, especially when the fruit center is open, or the hours where the gym is open and things are open on that street, because people will often park in that parking lot. And people were concerned about drinking and driving. People were concerned about smells and odors. People were concerned about storage, and also the loading zones, as you mentioned. People were concerned about sort of Board of Health issues, so an increase in like rodent problems because of the trash and the, not having proper storage for the trash. People were concerned about having the air filters to be able to properly filter the odors. And then people were concerned about the level of cooking that was gonna go on in the small kitchen that's there versus the plate, mostly like sandwiches and things that people made on the stove, eggs and things like that, versus a larger sort of kitchen. So that's my memory of the kinds of things that were raised, but I did go to, I watched online all of those meetings, so there could be more, but.
First of all, that's amazing, because that's,
The memory, right? That was what it was.
that's not good memory. That's like, holy cow, how many popsicle sticks I drop on the ground. That was amazing.
Thank you.
That was amazing.
I appreciate it. I'm
That's
not
exactly what they said.
situation, but that
No,
is
well
what
done.
happened.
No, Liz, I appreciate that. You know, you're very active in East Milton.
Thank you.
As a resident of East Milton and Precinct
Yes,
6, I
thank you.
appreciate what you do, and also you, Steve.
And Lori,
Oh, of course, Lori.
thank you.
But seriously, that was exactly what went on. That was
Right.
very well done, seriously.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone?
But-
Counts? I mean, those were the general. Those were.
Can I give a little bit of the other side? So that was some concerns that people raised. A lot of that was addressed during the meetings. So I'm not saying how I feel, right or wrong, right? But some of the things that were talked about was that maybe limiting the hours that the bar part was open, the patio bar part was open to only when the children's, like the nutshell is closed. Maybe closing the windows to the patio during like later at night so that it's not disturbing the residents. I don't think that they really addressed the parking, but some of these things were raised. Like,
course.
I think that the cooking situation was discussed, that actually the fruit center does a lot of the cooking of the prepared foods upstairs in
Yeah.
where that kitchen was. So that was kind of already addressed. Putting additional remediation systems was discussed. So I want to say, like, a lot of these things were talked about both directions, and the people that were proposing the restaurant also had like responses to all that. So I encourage people to go back and watch if they didn't, but.
Peter.
Liz, what type of restaurant is going to be? What's the bar restaurant?
Say the restaurant that was going to go in there. It's like a Mediterranean restaurant,
It's like a tapas.
like a tapas, and then there'll be kind of a bar in the patio. So that's sort of why they built up the stairs, but they would still have that elevator access. So
Thanks.
Jay.
So of the concerns that we just heard about this particular project, I would say most, if not all of those, could be raised and addressed at a select board meeting, because if a restaurant wants a liquor license, they need to go to the select board and ask for the liquor license. And I would, if I'm going to generalize, I would say in general, restaurants that don't have a liquor license are generally smaller and generally not open as late. So and some of the concerns you expressed would not be an issue if there's no liquor license, and other ones would just be less of an issue because it's not open as late. It's a small, it's Brugger's Bagels instead of Navara. So for a large restaurant or bar that wants to serve alcohol, they're already going to have to get permission from a elected body in this town that will hear from any citizen who wants to speak to them. So that may be another reason why we don't need yet another hurdle.
Anyone live near any restaurants in town?
Steve,
Yeah. Live near all of them, actually.
So when I
Built a
asked,
circle.
oh yeah, I don't know, you might live down on Worth Street. But I don't know. What do you see issues? Be honest.
Yeah, well,
And I open that to anybody, as living near one.
listen, there are some pluses, right? I can walk to some of them, right? And it's nice to be able to walk to Novara, Abbey Park, and have a lunch on a Friday when it's Focus Friday for me, and or to go, a Saturday night, have an easy dinner and walk home. That's amazing. You don't have to worry about parking or anything like that. Having said that, though, I mean, I smell all the restaurants in the morning. I take the dog out at 5 a.m. I can smell donuts. I can smell Mr. Chan's, all of it. And, it's something you get used to. You don't hear it, because it's kind of living near the city, sort of, right? But then you walk by some of them in the morning, and you'll see some trash out on the street, cigarette butts, trash, and all kinds of stuff like that. That sometimes gets cleaned up. But if you go early and you're out 6 a.m., that's all there. And the trash is not, always kept in the little area where it's contained. So there is concern. We have, there's rats in the neighborhood. We had to hire a service that we pay quarterly. They come in and we have traps all around our house, right? And so that's real. And you find them dead in the street. I can show you pictures on my phone that I've had 2 in my backyard, which is not awesome. So I think there's some pluses with the proximity. You can go there. They're pretty decent. No shots on them for that. But it's the noise. You hear some of it. I mean, some of the staff that works there. I can tell you when there's one person is working because he parks his truck on Church Place. He starts it up and he needs an exhaust. I feel bad. I feel like I should start a GoFundMe for him. But you hear it, and it's like 11 o'clock at night, So the noise, I hear a little bit. Not that much, to be honest with you, about that. But it's the traffic. I was coming down Church Place to turn on a Church Street. They're double-sided parked, and someone's trying to turn in to come down. They can't even go down anywhere in the street, so it's backed up there. Imagine that. That's before any additional buildings are built. So I think there's general concern for parking, safety, noise, trash, rodents, all these things. If you ask any of my neighbors, it's the concerns. I mean, they're real, but they need to be addressed and handled, I think.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
well, Steve and I are also on the neighborhood association, and so we hear kind of concerns of other neighbors, so not to speak for those people, but some of the things that I notice, in addition to what Steve said, and things that people have mentioned to us, and it's not necessarily this restaurant, which doesn't exist yet, so, but there was a lot of issues with the loading zone. Yeah. People park on, what's that street that Starbucks is on? People park on that street, and you can't get down the road because there's
Franklin.
this one.
Yeah.
There are people parked here and there are people parked here delivering food because there's no loading zone there anymore. People have expressed concerns about the rats. I've seen pictures of the rats. Steve has shared pictures of the rats with us.
Unfortunately.
And the main thing is the blocking, I think, that people have expressed to us is the blocking of the roads. And I've seen that a lot. So when people have their deliveries. And people can say, okay, well, we're not going to do that. But my understanding is they deliver when they're going to deliver, especially to small restaurants. And so that can be a little bit difficult as well. Yeah. So I don't know if a site plan review would fix that problem.
Yeah,
but
the loading zone.
That's another concern that people have raised.
That was something that they brought up. Mason.
I think there's another concern that I see often are the, DoorDash and Uber Eats.
Yeah.
They crowd Adams Street, right near Player Bowls. That whole area, it's, if you go down there between 11 and 1, and when I telework from home, sometimes I'll go and grab lunch, and it's impossible. It's everyone's double parked. It's like driving in Boston. But some of the Boston streets like Boylston are wider, but you'll see it's all Uber Eats, DoorDash, and so if you open another restaurant there, that's another concern too, because you have CVS there, right? And a lot of elderly people go to CVS to pick up their medications, and, they use that pharmacy, and they're out between 9 to noon. I'm just speaking about my parents, that's when they go out, And if you've got DoorDash and Uber Eats with that restaurant, that's another, it's not just the loading with, the big bear truck that I see right in front of Navara and Abbey Park. It's all of that congestion. That's a concern.
That's a good call.
Because people don't want to pick up their own food anymore. So they use a delivery service.
Anyone else? Anything you want to add just about the restaurant inclusion?
I could just do nothing but echo what everybody said, but I think the biggest thing is parking. You can't, it's almost becoming like Dorchester, East Milton, which is probably what people get frustrated with is, on Friday afternoon, if you're in Quincy, which Quincy sometimes Friday afternoon, coming home, it can take me 20 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes. It's insane, the line of traffic that's there. But parking and traffic is a big issue.
Anything about any of those other just complaints, trash or anything? We've heard all those. Yeah, Jay.
Okay, sorry. I just want to respond to what I just heard, which is, parking. If it's a space with restaurant A and restaurant A leaves and restaurant B moves in, and there's no external changes, I don't know if the parking is going to be worse. Maybe restaurant B will be more popular, or maybe it was not a restaurant. Maybe it was something else that moved out and a restaurant moved in. Is the parking going to be worse with the new business than it was for the old business?
At the plate, they are going to expand the, seating in there. So the answer is yes.
Sure,
It
but
might be a different thing, and the plate was honestly, it was just a breakfast, lunch thing. So it's an evening thing too, so it is going to be worse for those times.
But this is a situation where there's no external change to the building. And I'm not saying I have the answer, I'm just saying let's keep in mind what we're talking
And
about.
I'm not against it, but I really do think the citizens have a right to comment on it and express their concerns. I think you want them to be able to. That's my position.
Okay.
I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah, Milton certainly is in a unique situation. Maybe not other small towns, but where we have residential areas right up against business districts. You have expensive homes. People spend a lot of money who are right there. So it is, like we have this big open strip or road, a main drag with restaurants and stores, like you see maybe in like Wellesley. That Wellesley Center, they are that big thoroughfare that goes through, and no residential area near it, And I use that as an example because I was just recently there.
But don't you think it's a good idea to evolve? We're reviewing not this last meeting, but last week, I believe, the whole liquor petition to have that, right, have people have those events where they can have the liquor license. That was linked to a bylaw or law that was from 1934 or something like that. All right, well, maybe cell phones didn't exist back then, I don't know, but times change, right? So you need to evolve. Our demographic is changing, we're moving in, there's more people here. They certainly want more amenities, but they also want to have safety, parking, trash removal, all the stuff that they're paying for. So I think checks and balances are good. They're healthy, and they can be helpful, I think. So, and it's going to, seems logical.
I think the only bad thing is, and I agree with everything that I've heard. It's funny, all the things that Liz listed, with the exception of visual impacts, are things that I wrote down the minute we started talking, what I thought were topics that would be of concern when you mentioned we were talking about site plans for restaurants. But as long as I've been in the town has a long history of NIMBY attitudes, not my backyard. And so the challenge for me is to try, how do we go about balancing our desire for more amenities, more commercial tax revenue, an enhanced town experience against the impacts that it will have against current residents. I think the field for the high school, that battle for the lower field was a classic example of, oh my God, this is so important for the town and the school, yet people were looking for reasons to object to the field, and my attitude is, you decide to live next to a school, why would you battle tooth and nail? But so really, my point is, and I don't have an answer, is how do we balance, how do we create an environment that is conducive to commercial businesses, and in particular, small businesses? Because every layer of review that we add is just another hurdle that only encourages existing players that either have the capital resources or the inside knowledge on how to navigate that process, and that doesn't benefit the residents of the town. And it also drives up cost, for that matter, which residents ultimately end up eating anyway. So I'd love to hear any great ideas on how to balance those two competing priorities.
Liz?
So in this particular instance, with this particular restaurant, what the planning board did was, what the restaurant just, anyway, it came to an agreement by which the restaurant is going before the zoning board of appeals because it's actually much different than the plate. Now, I don't know if that would have to happen in every instance because the plate had a special permit, this has to have a special permit, et cetera. The next restaurant will have to have a special permit. So this was something that, Meredith Hall had mentioned at our last, not this past warrant committee meeting, but the one before that she was here in front of us at the Council on Aging. And she had mentioned that was kind of their recommendation because, great, Marbella, it's the same people that own Navarre, it's the same people that own Abbey Park. They're very trusted business people within our neighbor, within Milton that we all know and are familiar with. But if they don't have to get a special permit, then the next restaurant that comes in, which could be a restaurant that people don't want to have, would be able to be there. So I thought that was sort of a check and balance on Marbella. So just kind of to your point, the new restaurant's called Marbella. To your point, that was a way that the planning board was able to work with that particular restaurateur without this whole site plan review. So that was another pathway. I don't know if it would be applicable in every circumstance. That was kind of a rare thing. But I think that the planning board does a good job of many things, and in addition to which, of working with the restaurateur, the people, in order to come up with some kind of a solution. So I thought that was a good approach that they had.
That's a good point, Liz. And to the, the planning board and the members on the planning board are all lifelong, not all, but almost lifelong residents of the town. I look at Meredith and Maggie Oldfield, who's gone through the special permitting process herself, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for Cheryl Tagayas, the senior member on the planning board. And I trust them. And they know the concerns of the town. I think they've lived it. And working with the companies, I think, is a really good idea. And they're cognizant of it. And I think that it's not a situation with them. I mean, I could be wrong. I could see something, but that they would just shut something down automatically. I think they're sensitive to the needs of the town, the desires of the citizens, but also, on both ends, the amenities versus, safety, cleanliness, that kind of stuff. So Liz, that's a good point.
But I kind of take Andrew's point. I mean, I think
absolutely.
I think that I'm not really 100% in agreement with you, although I appreciate your summary of my point. But I think that
Cross-examining.
I think
I thought I almost had you.
I do want to make a
appreciate your summary, but it was a little bit different than what I was trying to say, which was that I think that the fact that we have the select board hearing from people about this, the planning board hearing from people about this, the ZBA hearing from people about this, to add another layer, my mind is not made up on this, but I think to add another layer, it really is, at a certain point, the planning board already has pathways by which they do work with the restaurateur, was sort of my point. do we need this additional pathway? Maybe. They think they do. Who am I to say? But there is already a lot of processes in place for input. And I also live not as close as you, but over there. And, it is a concern of mine. And because Steve and I are so active in the neighborhood association, I care about the concerns a lot of the people that we, serve in that role and here on the Warrant Committee. And so, I'm not making light of that either. So I'm not sure. I could be swayed. My other thought is, why are we excluding people who are doing interior work of any change of use or size that doesn't expand? Never mind. Other things besides the restaurant, bar, or entertainment. I just think, I know that Meredith explained that, but I could see other situations in which other commercial businesses maybe also could have an impact. I don't know. But anyway.
Which ones? Maybe we need to add them.
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Oh.
I mean, that's kind of a throwaway point. She did have a good reason for why restaurants, bars, I don't know what entertainment is besides that, but entertainment. If you want to throw darts, like in the
Maybe.
seaport, what do I
Anything that's going to be later in
theater.
the evening,
Sure.
Yeah.
I think time, but anyway.
Not to be a contrarian here, but Liz made a point about how, this is a trusted restaurateur, they operate current, to business. To me, that almost seems exclusionary of new businesses coming in, and that's a concern for me. Obviously, Novara and Abbey Park, they do a great job. They've been around for a while, but I don't think that just because they have these two businesses, I hope Vance isn't watching this, that he should also open a third restaurant. Not that he shouldn't, but I just think that we should be open-minded to allow for other businesses to thrive in this town, because Milton, in my opinion, has a history of keeping things familiar, and I don't. I'm
That's
not.
well said.
I'm not all about that, because I think we should have an open mind for other new businesses to try to come in and add to the diversity, particularly small businesses in this town, because we do live in a diverse community. And the businesses that are currently here are not diverse at all by any means. So, sorry, Vance. He was great, hired my daughter, but my thought on small businesses.
Liz.
Well, and further to that point, I think, is that, having these additional sort of the site plan review might discourage smaller, locally owned businesses. So, or new restaurateurs. If you're having to have additional costs of having this whole site plan review, just because you want to do additional work to change up the restaurant, is that going to discourage, someone who's just trying to get their feet in the door of opening a restaurant, bar, whatever, versus someone who does already have this established business and can afford to do that, or a chain.
Right. We
Which
have
Lori's
El
trying to
Barrio, which is
outlaw, and
great.
I don't disagree with her.
Sorry to interrupt. They're great, but they don't have a liquor license. That's the big difference in terms of that type of business. But those are just my thoughts. It's not changing on the board.
I think they're great.
El Barrio?
No, I think your thoughts were good thoughts. That was,
El Barrio's
yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts from anybody just regarding the restaurant issue? Jay, you have anything you'd like to follow up? Okay, why don't we transition into to ADUs on site plan review? What do we think about?
Is that in the paperwork? Accessory dwelling units, okay.
Are there any, Liz?
Okay, well, since I'm the one that brought it up, I have two thoughts about it. So one, if you look at sections F, which is review standards, G, site design standards, and H, which is general building design standards. Okay, so a lot of these things really relate to, as Meredith Hall said in our meeting, more commercial uses than an ADU. So I'm not really sure, one, if this is the appropriate place to have it, but also two, a lot of these things I think don't necessarily work, because I know there was one that said that a garage should be not facing the road, but of course you could build an ADU that is your garage. That's an ADU that could exist and it faces the way it faces. I'm just concerned because the regulations for ADUs, which I know we'll get into, but the regulations for ADUs are very limited in how much you can restrict. And so I know a lot of this says they will consider, they may consider, they shall consider. And the general building design standards, some of this I don't think really would apply. So I can go through them all, but I'm not going to bother because we did that the other day. But I'm just not sure, because it seems to me like, one, it's much more for commercial use, all of these, E, F, G, whatever I said. But also, I'm not sure that it's not so restrictive that it would be permitted by the regulations anyway. And so I'm not against having site plan review for ADUs, but I'm just not sure that these three sections should apply to that.
Anybody have any thoughts? Jay?
Yeah, when I read the ADU regulations, it says, there are a couple double negatives that I'll try to cancel out, but it says, you can have a site plan review, but you can't have a site plan review that is not clear and objective. And, we're replacing a one-page vague site plan with a 7 or 8 page more specific site plan. So that's better, and I don't know what other towns do, but this is still somewhat subjective. So, that's a concern.
Lori?
I thought they said that they looked at other towns, and many other towns have a similar site plan as this. And Cheryl's been working on this for a number of years and has blood, sweat, and tears into it. And I appreciate all the work she did. So I'm back to, they've done their job. They've killed themselves on these two things. I defer to the experts. I am not a zoning person. I respect what they say.
Liz?
I think that that's true. I'm not sure how much to Jay's point, I think that it's true that they looked at other town site plan reviews. I'm not sure how true that is with respect to ADUs, though. So I'm not against this whole site plan review, and I know how much they worked on it. I'm just not sure for the ADU. So, like, for example, parking areas shall be designed so that vehicles may exit without backing into a public street. Well, I mean, depending on where your house is, I back out onto a public street every day when I get out of my driveway. That's what happens. I pull into my driveway and I back out. And I don't have room to turn around because I live in a house like everybody else. And so, I don't know, like that doesn't really apply. That's just an example. So, surface parking shall be located to the sides and to the rear to the greatest extent possible. Your driveway is where your driveway is. It's in the front. I park very close to the sidewalk every day when I park. I have more than one car. That's how it is. Landscaping at the parking perimeter. There are no trees at the end of my driveway. I have a lot of trees in my property, but not there. Some of these things really seem to me to apply to commercial and not really to an ADU. So I'm just not sure why that's there. And then having all of these things apply to it. Parking materials. It has specific things that the parking materials have to be. Your parking material is whatever your driveway already is, if you have an ADU. I mean, maybe you're going to build a new driveway. I don't know. But Jay had pointed out before about how you have to have a sidewalk both from the ADU to the thing, and then from the house to the thing, and then back. And I don't know that that's all necessary. And you're going to have to put in new pathways. If I'm building an ADU that already exists because it is my garage, which is an option, then I'm having to create these things that don't exist. So I'm just saying that based on the regulations, You're very limited in what you can restrict an ADU to be. I worry that this is a little bit too limited for a site plan review. But that being said, I agree with you that the planning board has put a lot of effort into this. So I'm just raising this as a thought.
No, Liz, I appreciate that, and I just, your point standing, but as to Lori's, I know, this ADU bylaw is going on now. There are towns that have used this language now, approved by the Attorney General, and have put into effect. And I know Meredith and others were talking about the gentle guidance that they're allowed with this in the ADU. And I think based upon my, listening to the meeting is that the planning board's confident that this will survive AG review. It already has with other municipalities, but that was my memory. So that's where they're confident. And I was nervous. I was nervous at that, going through it previous to the meeting the other night and during the meeting. Like, is this going to survive? But I'm confident in them. And member Chugaius, that this is, will withstand some scrutiny on the state level. But anyone else have, just on to Liz and to Jay's point? Ron?
I just have a general comment here, and maybe it's to how I look at government, but I personally prefer less government and less restrictions and less, impact on my autonomy or as a citizen. But I also know we live in a community and we want certain standards, right? So that's where I don't really get into the details of what these experts are supposed to be telling the town. I don't think that's I can't opine. But I just think about, do we want more or less? And I'm also split. I feel like a lot of folks are, we want them to do what's right, but we don't want to slow down business. We don't want to stop people from building ADUs because we do want more housing. Like, those are good things, but we probably want them to do it right. And I would just say, I agree with Lori. Here, I would just think, if the planning board's already committed to this and they've thought through, a lot of these clauses, I would defer them. We can always change it if we find that they're overly restrictive language. I'm sure they have to live with it. If the people are complaining all the time, I'm sure they will decide not to enforce certain things.
Yeah, and I know, this is what you don't want to hear. Like, if there's a problem, it goes back to town meeting, comes back to us, and we got to redo it. And, I think they had thoughts of that. And I think their trust is what has, other communities have already passed the sniff test. So I think that's what gives them the confidence in bringing this forward, so. Anyone have any?
Yeah, I've read the state law. The state's really pushing for ADUs. They really want them. And it's very restrictive what we can do. So I think this is I trust the planning department on this.
Yeah.
But I think that you also, we all live in a community, and we moved here for a particular reason, and we like the feel of Milton, I suspect. And we probably want to see some, as reasonable as possible, ADUs. Like, nobody wants to see it everywhere. It's also going to affect, if you're near a T-stop, it's going to affect the parking too, just so you know. That's another thing. You don't have to have, if it's within half a mile of a T-stop, you don't have to provide parking. So they're going to park on the street, so that's going to clog up more, that's going to be a problem too. So, I think there's some state issues with this, but I think anything they can do, I think the planning department, I trust them on it. Try to control it.
Thanks, Mike. Karen, is Allison on there? Can you promote her?
I've tried to, she keeps declining. Did she ask you?
Yeah, she just.
Allison, I'm gonna invite you to be a panelist again. No, she's declined a few times.
Macy, is there anyone who had?
I'm just going to second
I lost
Lori,
track.
just a second.
Jay, you want to follow up to that?
Yeah, I do want to follow to what Lori said. I'm a huge supporter of this article in general. I'm going to vote, however we work out the details, I'm going to vote for it tonight. I'm going to vote for it at town meeting. I'm going to encourage everybody I know to vote for it. So I'm a big fan of these in general. It's just the, little detail, or a couple items that we're talking about now that we're trying to figure out. And when it comes to ADUs, I do not, some people said, we think this law will pass scrutiny with the AG, and maybe it will. I have no reason to question that. But in general, it seems like the idea is you should hold the ADUs to the same standards that you hold a single-family house. I'm looking right here, design standards. The design standards of the ADU should be the same as a single-family house. Dimensional standards, don't hold them to any stricter standards than a single-family house. So it makes me hesitate a little bit to put up this one hurdle for an ADU that's not there for a single-family house. And also, when we were talking earlier tonight about the restaurants, somebody said, well, if we get it wrong, we can change it. I think if we put in here that ADUs are covered by what are we talking about? Site plan approvals, that's never going to go away. It's never going to be taken out, ever. But if we don't put it in now, we could put it in 6 months from now if it seems to be needed. So that's my feeling.
Judy?
Hit the wrong button there. So I don't know the answer to this, and I'm hoping maybe somebody on our committee can have that information. If I had a lot of land and I want to build a house, I believe there are site reviews and zoning concerns during the building process. Or let's just use the memory care unit down on Highland, just as an example of a non-residential building. I believe the same processes go through for that, especially like down at Highland. And they talked about that, how many trees, how many, et cetera. So beyond the basic zoning permits, the permits to build, don't we already do that if you've got raw land and you are building something? That was a question, everyone.
Yes.
Okay, Brian?
You have to do site plan review for a house, is that the question?
Yeah, in other words, if you have raw land and you're building something,
Yes.
be it a single-family residence or something like the memory care unit going in down on Highland, isn't there already a plan for site reviews in those circumstances?
Yes.
So, if you were to forward that thought,
I don't think there is.
For a house?
Not for a single-family
Site,
house.
site plan review?
The building department will review.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not this site plan review process specifically.
No, I'm sorry. Judy, you were going down. I just wanted to make sure you weren't making another point based upon that point.
no, I was just wondering, how, if we had to do it for the single-family house that's gonna add an ADU, wouldn't it seem logical that we would do it for the addition ADU?
Anyone? I'm not sure I understand Judy.
I know, I think it's in my head, I can see what I'm trying to say, but it's just not coming out.
No, I
right.
understand. Jay?
If I can help, I'm reading the current site plan rules that say it's for multifamily buildings and it's for commercial buildings more than 800 square feet. And the new ones say multifamily buildings, ADUs, more than 800 square feet, restaurants and bars, parking lots. I'm summarizing, but it
Right,
doesn't
thank you for
necessarily-
that, yeah.
So yes, for the
I was
memory
just
care.
wondering where in the process, site reviews jumped in to, the buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Anybody have any other comments just about the ADU inclusion in the site plan proposal? Liz?
The only other thing, and this sort of relates more to the ADU bylaw than this, but to me they're kind of interconnected, if the fact that we're still waiting for the Commonwealth to have the, we're still waiting for them to have the like model bylaw, whatever, that we're still waiting for them on the ADU. I just am a little bit concerned about doing all of this with the ADU before we have that, because I understand the reasons why the planning board said that they're trying to get the bylaw now, they're required to, the way that the statute is, the state is catching up with itself, they're having these requirements that we comply with the law before they get around to doing the model bylaw, I get that. But here, and again, I'm not against, I'm just, I'm very open-minded about this, but I am a little bit concerned about putting the cart before the horse, as it were. So is there a reason why we're deciding all this now for the site plan review and not waiting until after we see that? I don't know. And then having it at the May town meeting.
I think Meredith talked to this the other night at length.
About the bylaw, but not this part, the site plan review.
About having them work together and passing them at the same time to give, everyone.
Not if you don't include the ADU. Like, I don't know why we have to include that in the site plan review at this juncture right now.
I don't know if anyone wants to speak to what the planning board had to say about this.
Isn't it because the ADUs can be built today? So they're trying to just protect
Yeah.
the community so that things aren't built that have no consideration for what it may look like.
That was somewhat my understanding, and if it needs to be changed, I think that's why they were gentle on the language. I know they took some stuff out of the ADU. They were requiring like one person per bedroom and like some other stuff that I know would not have withstood any type of state scrutiny. So I know they did a lot of work on removing a lot of things that they had in there that probably would not have flown. And they removed some of the shall language to suggest, we would prefer things like that as opposed to requiring them. And I think, other communities are using this right now. Very similar language with that gentle guidance, I think, as opposed to requiring. So like that's just my recounting of the issue that was raised. I'd like another, Peter, please.
Yeah, I heard the same thing from them, and I was very impressed with what they had accomplished in getting both of these together. I don't have a lot of experience reviewing those plans. However, they were very, very much experienced. My sense is that they wanted to get something done right away, so that somebody decides they're building tomorrow, they've got a plan for it. I would expect that maybe some of the things that are in there may go out. I don't think that anything is going to be added by the state regulation when it comes out. I think the state really was looking at really expansive use of the ADU, so maybe it'll change, but I would say that based on the presentation I saw, I think we should say yes to what's been put on the table, what's already been approved by town council, and they thank the AG.
Yeah. The site plan has. The ADU, town council hasn't given
Hasn't
a
seen the
final
ADU.
check on it, on that one, but as to the site plan.
I thought that was supposed
Anything else from anybody? Okay. We can move on to the ADU bylaw now. Would like to discuss that. Not approved by town council as of yet. Approved unanimously by the planning board. And as indicated, these were from HLC. We went through and did a significant amount of grammatical and other Scrivener-type errors on it. Again, the encouraged language. I know Jay had several comments. I know we raised some issues about the rental times. Trying to give you guys some thoughts just from my notes. Anybody want to speak
I do.
to this, Liz?
So, I really appreciated the kind of interplay between the warrant committee and the planning board. And I thought that was really great that we were able to have that conversation while they were here and they were able to vote on it so that we could kind of make some of these updates. I thought that was very productive. And that rectified all of my concerns because all of the language where it said, so in particular, I had said that one of my concerns was this design standard D1 that talked about the exterior modification shall be architecturally compatible, complementary color palettes, exterior finishes, window types, because now it says is encouraged, and before it said shall. And a concern of mine was that that shall language would be rejected by the Attorney General because I can put an addition on my house and it can have whatever kind of window type, roof pitch, exterior finish, and complementary color palette that I want. And it could look ridiculous and not have to match the rest of my house. And so for an ADU, there isn't that similar, requirement for my house as they're making for the ADU. Now it says is encouraged to be, and that makes me feel like it's much more likely to be acceptable. And so I really appreciated that, and my concern has been allayed by that discussion. So I thought that was really great and productive.
Definitely made a consistency throughout the language. Are there anything else? They spent some time on this.
I mean, as we discussed, I have concerns over the 12-month minimum. And I actually thought some of the points that were brought up by the planning board, how, it's unlikely that people would want less than 12 months, people don't want two renters, is more reason to not do, like, if we think it's so unlikely, then why not do 6 months, for example? Again, just having been in the position myself, both as a renter and someone who is renting property, the 12-month is very restrictive, especially if you kind of get off cycle. In the Boston area, it's generally September 1 to September 1. And if you get off cycle, then you're giving people 15-month leases. Like, it just gets complicated, and I think it can really reduce your renter pool. And again, if one of the reasons it was, the state has now decided, so obviously Milton did not decide, but one of the benefits should be that people can have some additional income by having these units on their property, then I would think we would want to help facilitate the renting of it and not Airbnb style, not 3 nights at a time, but as Jay said, do we want to mandate that it's a minimum of 12 months versus something smaller than that? And I would be in favor of something smaller than that.
Thank you, Julie. Anybody have any thoughts about that issue? I know Jay spoke last night, Julia reiterated her comments.
I
Allison.
would like to add, so, I know people putting in the ADUs now in my neighborhood that are really not every ADUs for renting. It's actually, some people are using it as like pool houses or like simulators with bars and stuff like that. So like, not sure 100% that every ADU is being used for purposes to rent extra income. But I do want to hold firm on a 12-month because, this isn't an urban, we're not the city. These are neighborhoods with kids. We need people that are committed to the location for whatever purposes, whether they're coming to the school system, whether they're working in the area. But I would feel more comfortable as a parent if people were putting in ADUs in my neighborhood, if there was a commitment to be a part of the community versus, a 6 month, because they're, maybe planning on leaving quicker than somebody who would want to stay and be more active. Or maybe they don't want to be, but I would feel more comfortable for myself. I don't think people should be coming in and exiting it. We would like them to rent and stay here. So I think if we're trying to create a purpose for long-term, we want to kind of set the tone that that's what they would really want, you know? So I do think that we need to maintain that this is a suburb that is close to the city, but we're not the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Allison. Oh, Peter, and then Liz.
I would agree with Julia from a 6-month standpoint. 6 months or 12 months is not an issue. However, I don't think you're going to get a landlord if you're, which is what you become, giving a 6-month lease and then having to go get another 6 months and that period. But I think it should be left up, quite honestly, to whoever's doing the rent, whoever the landlord is. So it's, could I not take somebody for 6 months if I wanted to, if I understood the situation, and then extend the lease? I don't see why I wouldn't be able to do that. So I think though most landlords are gonna actually, you know, if I was doing this, I'd wanna know if you're gonna be there for 2 years, not 6 months, or 3 years, or, you know, you're coming in, you're just taking a job down the street, and you're gonna be there for 5 years. Terrific. So you don't wanna, turnover is not something you're looking for in a rental unit. So.
Thank you, Liz.
In addition to Julia's example of people who are off the cycle, another example is people who have purchased a house, are doing work on that house, and need some place to live temporarily. So they've sold their other house, or they were a renter, and they've purchased a house, they're doing a lot of work, updating it, and they want to have some place to live. They want to get their kids in the school system already. They want to get, you know, the jump on moving. They rent an ADU, and they are a permanent member of the community. Another example I can think about is Milton actually has quite a bit of people who have sort of emergency housing situations. So people who are leaving a domestic violence situation. And so there are people who, just kind of going to Macy's point about thinking of the diversity of our residents, there are people who live in Milton and are escaping other situations and are members of our community and do go to our schools. And maybe for them, this would be a great option to be able to have a residence while they reestablish and rebuild their community. And so I'm very interested about not just thinking of the examples of the people that I may know, because maybe I only know, you know, people like me, or maybe other people only know people like them, but really thinking about holistically, who are the kinds of people that are going to be renting ADUs, and are those people who might, for whatever reason, need fewer than 12 months. And so I agree with your point that maybe leave it up to the landlords. But I think we can think of 3 examples off the top of our heads without even really doing a lot of research into it about times when somebody would want to be a permanent member of the community, but would need to rent an ADU for fewer than 12 months. And so I'm a little hesitant to limit someone to that year. Maybe if you say it's encouraged or something like that, or to your point, just leave it out altogether and have it be up to the landlord's discretion, because the person is going to be living on their property. I wouldn't want like some new person to be coming in every month. I take it that they don't want to have an Airbnb verb, like whatever situation. Maybe just prohibit that a little bit more explicitly, if that's the answer. But
We'll go in. I'm sorry.
No, I understand all the points, and when I think about it from a practical standpoint, the whole point is to avoid an Airbnb type situation, right? You don't want to create a nuisance for your neighbors, or neighbors don't want to have to deal with the nuisance of transient crowd. And when I think about the way it's written today, there's really no real enforcement mechanism, right? Is the planning board going to review every lease that you write? Or if I have a 12-month lease, we make it 20-month. I have a 20-month lease with no penalty. What difference is it if I leave after 2 weeks, or 3 months, or 6 months? And so I think the language as is probably safe to leave as is without impacting any of the real cases that we're talking about. But the real question is, the way it's written or the mechanism that's in there now doesn't really prevent the situation that we're trying to avoid. Right? Like, the only way that anybody's gonna know that I'm using it for Airbnb is if somebody complains. Or that people are leaving after 3 months each time.
The moving truck pulls up.
And the only time that happens is when a complaint happens. And so the real question may be about what sort of enforcement mechanism or what mechanism do you actually put in place to protect the neighbors, which is what we're trying to, or the neighborhood, which is what the whole point is. Because in some ways, I'm like Ron, where I don't want there to be too many restrictions, but because I know people abuse the system, the way I think of things is I'm okay with more regulation as long as it doesn't add any unnecessary costs and that there is a reasonable mechanism for exception. So if there's no room for a sidewalk, but I have a huge backyard, should I be prohibited from putting in an ADU? In that case, I believe no. I mean, I should be allowed to build whatever I want to build as long as it doesn't impact my neighbors in a material way as opposed to like nosy neighbor problem, right? So, so my point being, I'm okay with that in, I'm okay with it out, but I think what we probably want to focus on is something that gives the town teeth to prevent what we're trying to prevent.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm gonna go Julia, Peter, Ron.
And then Judy.
And then Judy, then Brian.
Sorry.
Okay.
Judy at some point.
I was just gonna say that I think we need to be careful about equating home ownership or long-term renters with engaged community members. I think the implication that if you're a short-term renter, you aren't going to be as invested in the community is not necessarily true. I don't know that there's a direct correlation between those two things. I know plenty of people who've lived in Milton, for however many years and have not gotten involved in the community. And I know renters who've been here for a very short amount of time and have gotten more involved in the community than, some long-term owners ever have. So I think we need to be careful about implying that that is a hard and fast rule for short-term renters versus longer-term renters or homeowners.
Thank you, Julia.
I'm going to defer to
Brian. Actually, Judy.
Judy.
And
thank
Ron, actually, Ron.
Yeah, I just want-
I'm so
I have a
sorry.
couple comments, but I'll make it quick. I do think there's impact of having this 12-month here, even if we don't enforce it, because I do think it's a deterrent to people posting. And if you can't post it, then it doesn't give people the opportunity to look for housing, right? So if people are like, I can only rent for 6 months, I can't do it, I can't post it on Craigslist or whatever people do nowadays, because it'll be public and it's prohibited. I do worry about that. I don't like the 12 months, it seems kind of arbitrary, because if we really care about short-term rentals, like Airbnb, no one uses Airbnb and VRBO for 6 months or 3 months. I think it's the daily, weekly thing is probably enough for me. So I don't think we need the 12-month here. I don't understand this language in the next sentence that says ADU should not be used for boarding or lodging. I think I lodge in my house. I don't even know what that means. Like, is it commercial lodging or residential lodging? It's just like, I think they could say, I don't even know what else would you do with ADU other than board somebody there? Like someone has to live there, right? So I don't know what they're trying to get at unless they mean like nightly boarding, like a boarding house.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems like old 1900s
Yeah,
language, like.
well,
horse.
it is actually.
Yeah, we can thank the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for this language.
But
Been
I
around
just
a long
worry, 'cause
time.
that language makes me think, like, am I not supposed to rent it to a human being? Am I renting the horses?
You should speak to some of the lawyers, I guess.
Yeah.
Ruben?
He is a
Language-
lawyer.
Language is.
We discussed this a bunch.
He is a
with the
lawyer.
planning board.
Didn't actually say horses. I suppose you could put your horse in an ADU.
We talked about that at town meeting a couple of years ago.
All right, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't bring that back up.
Yeah, so horses on streets.
So yeah, that's my comment. I think we should get rid of the 12 months. It already says you can't use it for nightly, weekly. I would think that covers your VRBO concerns. And I do think, I don't think I've heard this, but I do worry that, similar point, that if we're saying that we don't want short-term residents, I don't know if I agree with that. I think there are perfectly good reasons where people need short-term housing in an emergency, or even just that's the way they live and maybe they're economically in that situation. So I worry that this wording could be interpreted to suggest that we don't want people to come in here, come into Milton to get into the schools. Because I've heard that before, that we think that there's an invasion of people from not Milton coming in to use our schools. And I worry that it makes me feel like there's some aspect of that, keep people out. I just don't like that personally, so I don't agree with it. I don't think we feel like that. I think we're welcoming. I prefer language read more like that.
Yeah, I don't think the intention is
I don't
necessarily
think so.
directed
I
at that.
feel like it could look like that we're being exclusionary, that we only believe you have to live here for 12 months to be a valid member of the society. I don't know if that's true or not.
Brian? Judy?
Yeah,
Like who?
Was Judy next? But-
Yeah, I gave the list and then I forgot it. Judy,
Should I talk or not?
please do. The floor is
thank you.
yours.
All right, I appreciate. To Julia's point, in a way, I've been a renter, I've been a property owner, and I've been a landlord. Had different kinds of hats at various periods of my life. In terms of being a landlord, even if you were to put a restriction on terms of length of residency, there's a million ways to get out of that. And as a landlord speaking, I no longer am, never will be again. But if I were, but having experience being a landlord, you would draft a 12-month lease, and if you're the person that wants to rent your property, says, I really probably only need this for 9, you just make an addendum that you will release them from the contract of the lease in terms of payment if they do leave at 10 months and don't stay the whole 12 months. It's just easy to do that with an addendum to the lease, which is a contract. It's a tricky thing with this whole, we'll call it the vacation rental, that it goes on everywhere in the world, actually, all countries. And it is horribly annoying if you are in a residential area to have an I'll just call it VRBO. And every 3 nights, somebody's rolling suitcases down the sidewalk, flashlights out, cell phones out, with their flashlight on, trying to figure out if they're at the right spot. And in the meantime, the neighborhood has quieted down. Everybody's getting ready for school or work the next day, retiring to bed to get enough sleep. That is a concern, for sure. And I kind of go both ways on this language of the 12 months. And if we didn't have that vacation rental options of non-hotel properties, we wouldn't be discussing this right now. Right? But it is prevalent. It's everywhere. So I just offer, you can say 12 months, you could say 6 months, and as a landlord, someone says, I would love to rent your property, but I'm most likely not going to be in town for more than 4 months. Just write an addendum. I release you from the contract financially. Okay, that's my 2 cents.
Brian?
So, thank you. I lived in Milton for 40 years. I rented for like 10. And I always had year-to-year leases, 12 months. The way I read the law is that you don't necessarily have to own the house, the way I read it. You don't have to own, like somebody else can own the house and build an ADU. So you don't even have to live in the neighborhood to do this. And you could theoretically, somebody could say, let's, take this neighborhood and build ADUs, like buy all the houses and build ADUs, and you can do that. And, I think it's a very developer-friendly law, again, but I don't think that, I think Milton is a series of neighborhoods, and I think that the 12 months is certainly doable and livable, and I would rather keep it to 12 months. And I think if you have kids in the school system, you want to keep them in there for 12 months. I think it works, you can do it, I don't think there's any problem with it. And my kids did it, and they went through it, and I think you want continuity. I think people in neighborhoods probably want continuity to who's living in the neighborhood. And I would keep it to the 12 months. That's one thing. The other thing I'd say is, I'd avoid using the language in the bylaws saying encouraged, unless you mean you don't want to enforce it. Because if you say encouraged, you don't have to do it. So, versus shall. So, unless you really don't care, so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Brian. Peter?
I think Judy has the answer. I liked Andrew's comments, like, who's going to enforce this? If you're coming in, my cousin's coming into town for 3 months, am I going to not rent him the house because it's only 3 months? No, I'm going to rent him the house, and I'm going to tell him to be quiet and not annoy the neighbors.
You could charge your cousin.
Absolutely.
I guess.
I'm a capitalist. I think that it would, hopefully help Julia think about 6 months. I mean, to Judy's point, everybody's got a 12-month lease, and you've got an out clause at 3 months or 6 months or whatever. And you can't put that you can't put it on social media as an Airbnb. It's a 12-month lease. So that's what you ask for, but you can take in anybody who shows up and says, I really want 6 or 9. Again, as a landlord, I wouldn't want to be doing 6 months, 9 months, 3 months. I want 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because it's easier as a landlord. Not that I would ever be a landlord. I had friends who were landlords, and I've had to bail them out on a number of occasions. But I think that's the way to play it would be exactly that. Have a 12-month lease, but if you had a situation, I don't understand, and I'm not playing against enforcement or against the rules of the town, but are we gonna have lease enforcement? Does every lease get filed in the town of Milton? I wouldn't think that they'd wanna take a look at everybody's lease.
That would cost a lot of money to look
Those
at
are
every
private
lease.
contracts anyway. They're not public information. You can't, you don't have access to that.
I mean, the
Okay.
funny thing is,
Okay, we're gonna go Jay. Who else? Was it Liz?
Sure.
And then you. And then Andrew. And then Judy. Okay, can we remember that? I can't. Okay, Jay.
So with the thoughts on enforcement, it would be a different situation if the law was already on the books and we were sort of the wise people deciding, how strictly to enforce this. But we're writing the law right now. And I'd rather write the law to be what we want it to be and not write it to be stricter and say, well, we'll just look the other way. I don't like the thought of people who personally feel like they need to follow the law will be harmed because they can't have a 6-month rent out the things at a 6-month. And people who are okay with skirting the law, they can do that. We're writing the law now, let's write what we want. I do want to, I think it's true that we don't want Airbnbs, or we don't want more Airbnbs, I should say. Because I was looking just today, there are Airbnbs in Milton. I looked them up. They exist. What this is trying to prevent is prevent a whole lot more. And I think that's a thing we want. And I do want to say I appreciate Liz bringing up the example of people in town who are doing work on their home. I've known a lot of people just in my 3-block neighborhood who've had to move out of their home for some number of months while the work is being done. They want to stay in the town of Milton, and that's a lot of people. Also, I would point out, we've got a lot of universities in the area. A visiting professor may not want to live in Cambridge or Boston. Maybe they want to live in Milton. Or Milton Hospital. People on Monday said maybe they have travel nurses. Maybe they have medical residents that are here for a certain number of months and would like to get a small place close to the hospital. So, yeah, I want to write the law the way we want to see it. Thank you.
Jay, what's your time frame?
I don't know. I've never been a medical resident. Oh, what number would I suggest?
What's the number, yeah.
I could go as low as 4. I could go as low as 3. But if it's 6, I think that's pretty good too.
Usually it's a year-long fellowship. if
I
you
mean,
do, yeah,
as long as it's not Airbnb range. I would think 3 would be not Airbnb range. But
Who's next? Speaking.
Sorry.
Liz.
So I don't think that the plan of having the lease say 12 months would work because this says an ADU may not be rented. It doesn't say the lease shall not be fewer than 12 months. It says it may not be rented for periods of less than 12 months. So I don't want to be warrant committee encouraging people to break the law in advance of it existing. If they want to change it to say it shall not be leased for, and then people want to get around it that way, fine, but it says may not be rented for. So whatever reason that is, if you were to rent it for someone for 6 months, that's different. So I don't think that would work. And I don't really feel comfortable proposing that people kind of skirt what this says as a law, a peddler in the law, as I am, as a lawyer.
Is one who practices law. Right?
Yeah, most of the time. Thank you.
Exactly. Me too.
Many of us. So I think that this is not a real sticking point for me personally, but I can see this being brought up at town meetings, so I'm glad that we're talking about it. But I don't know that I think that that approach is really the best, is sort of my point.
Thank you. Brian? No.
Sorry.
The funny thing is, if I could just make a rule right now, I'd make it a revocable permit. The ability to rent, anybody can build an ADU, but in order to generate income from it, it's a revocable permit, so that if somebody abuses the system or it causes a problem for the neighbors and they discover it's non-conforming, then they lose the right to be able to rent it. They can have it, they can have cousins over and not charge them. And that, to me, would be also a way to generate some revenue for the town. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure the town has the appetite to do that. But it would be a revocable right, let's put it that way.
I just want to respond quickly. I think that might be a legal issue because you could be alienating a property owner's right. I mean, by having a permit to rent. So there are constitutional issues to that. I don't know if you think the same. I mean, that's just from my background. So I think you're alienating a property owner's right to use the property in a way. I mean, obviously there's always zoning laws, there's restrictions, but to use it in a way that they want by getting a permit to rent, I think that could be a constitutional challenge on a property owner's right. So, but that's just my little side note. Not saying that, it's.
No. That's why I'm not sure
legal
it's
implications.
legal,
Yeah.
but that would be
No, it makes sense. I see, like, we're gonna suspend your right for a year.
Yeah, or you.
And then you can't do it
you
until-
can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't register your dog, and you don't pay your, what happens?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, again, like, there's no, I mean, everyone's supposed to get a license, right, for the dog, get a tag,
but nobody goes around checking.
yeah, nobody
dog
else
tags.
gets it. I mean, Nancy has her hands full anyway to begin with, right? But I'm just saying in terms of getting, anyway, that's just my legal thoughts on that. That's all. That's all.
Thank you, Macy.
Judy, I think Judy was.
I did, but Judy wants to.
Judy?
do it for.
Oh, thank you. In regards to, a member mentioned about the town will be checking leases. And I don't believe there is any way for a town to, check somebody, have it required that you turn in your lease every time you rent you have a two-family house, you rent the second floor, you don't turn in the lease to the town of Milton to show that you have a lease in effect for that rental unit. This is very complicated. I go back to just, this is kind of a strange story, but where I had property in Arizona, everyone had a casita. It was like de rigueur. And that was for all the people that want to visit you in the winter, but you don't really want them in the house. But then, you know, you just didn't want all your friends coming from the East Coast. So, but there's a huge market for snowbirds. They come in December, they go in March. They wear shorts in the winter, you don't. You can tell them, you know who they are. But in each town and in each homeowners association, they tweaked those. My homeowners association says you have to turn in a lease to the association to be reviewed. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm not doing that. Come and find me. It's a tricky thing because I don't believe anyone that's building an ADU for the purpose of passive income is going to allow anyone to stay in that house without a lease. It's a contract. It's the rules between the lessor and the lessee. This is required. There are state laws, town laws in every lease contract. Every state has a landlord-tenant publication you can find either in hard copy or on, I mean, there are rules, as Macy pointed out. There's rights. Everyone has rights, the landlord and the tenant. So this gets very complicated, and I think we're kind of hung up on what amount of time. And 12 months does indicate that, you know, you're serious about this not being in BRBO, I think they're called. And that's not desirable. Most municipalities throughout the country that have these problems are trying to, you know, tighten up the restrictions on them. I don't really have an opinion strongly about the terms of length. And I don't think you are really, you know, going around the rules if the town says 12 and someone comes along to me as a landlord and says, you know, I only envision my family being here for 8 months. I really love your property. I didn't know. And so as a landlord, you know, you've got quite the good fish on the hook. You know, they meet all of the criteria that you're looking for in a tenant. Are they going to come in and destroy your property? No. Are they going to, you know, have wild parties at 3 a.m.? No. So you're not going to bypass an opportunity like that. And my moral compass in the past and even in the present says, you know, you are actually helping the community in a way, by having a non-empty property and providing members of the community to have, more members of the community. So, I don't know. I stand not committed to the terms of length. Thank you.
Brian?
The more I think about this, the people that police it, the neighbors. And the more I think about this, the more I feel like we should go with the 12 months. Because I think you want people that are committed to the neighborhood. They're committed to the town. I mean, we are a town of neighborhoods. And you want people committed. Like, you theoretically could have somebody that doesn't own the house, that has an ADU there, and they don't really care about the neighborhood. But, and you do a 3-month thing, you might get a Harvard professor. You might not get a Harvard professor. You might get somebody that the neighbor's unhappy with for whatever reason. And you could theoretically be dealing with a problem, or the neighbors could be dealing with a change in the character of the neighborhood that they might not want. I mean, it might not be what they want. They want somebody who's there, who's committed. The kids are going to the school, or there's like, they want to live in Milton. Maybe they're saving money to buy a house there eventually or something, which is what a lot of people did, which is something similar to what I did. I just think you want a commitment, and I don't think you won't get that if you have a 3-month thing. I think it's not.
All right, Ron, then Liz.
I agree with Jay. I think it's not good practice for us to be here in a public meeting to say, this is the law, but we're not gonna look to enforce it, here are ways to get around it. I think that feels weird for us to be talking like that. I think if we say 12 months, that's the rule. People should follow the law, 12 months is 12 months. Right? So I'd like to make that clear. I think Jay's point, this is not the law yet. We have a chance to fix it to what we think is right. I think people could say they think 12 months is right, and that's fine. But people could also say 3 months is right. One concern, just a technicality, I think most leases, once you finish the term, it shifts to a month-to-month. I think that of itself makes this law really problematic, because you are then renting on a monthly basis, and just automatically you violate the law. And I do still think subleases is still a rental situation that wouldn't go for a full term. I don't know how we jive those two situations with this 12-month requirement. I'm not saying we shift it to a 1 month, but I just think anytime you add some restriction on people's abilities to do something, the government should think through what the implications are, because then you put people in an automatic situation where they're violating the law. We may not enforce it, but I just don't think that feels right.
Liz, then Macy.
There's, to my knowledge, nothing preventing me from renting my house for fewer than 12 months. And there's nothing preventing me from buying a property, flipping it, and selling it in fewer than 12 months. So again, going to the requirement in the regulations that we not have stricter, I want to say the word requirements again, but stricter requirements for ADUs than we have for principal residences. I am concerned that we are putting these requirements on ADUs where I could rent my house for any length of time. Could be an Airbnb, could be just because I want to go live someplace else for the summer. People can buy a property, flip it, sell it in whatever amount of time it takes to do that. That's some people's whole business. I agree with Ron that, the subleasing, it's going to be less than 12 months at a time. Depending on the length of the lease, goes month to month thereafter. Sort of depends on how long the lease is, but I agree. So again, I am concerned, as Jay, Ron, we sort of mentioned, I don't want to put people in a position of breaking the law, even unintentionally. I'm a person who cannot break the law because my law license depends on my following the law. I can't do it. There are other people, like many of us here. I would not be comfortable with that at all. And so this is a little bit tricky. I wonder if it just should not be included. Maybe take it out. Or maybe just have the provision that it's being prohibited from being rented on a weekly, daily, even monthly basis, and it should not be used for boarding commercial boarding, lodging, or other commercial uses?
I think the time period of 12 months is arbitrary, and I don't think it may necessarily be upheld in court, because again, you're alienating a property owner's right to engage in a month-to-month lease, which you're allowed to do. You can even have a tenant at will if you want to. So those are my thoughts. I just think that 12 months, I mean, I understand the community's concern in wanting a long-term tenant. I understand that. But if you have a property owner who wants to rent to your cousin for 3 months, you should have the ability to do that because it's your property. If you have a visiting professor who wants to come for a month, you should be able to do that. There are people who are on sabbaticals, they may want to, so I just think that it's overly restrictive. It's an arbitrary time period that's not supported by any demonstrated safety issues or any other like issues that would render, I think, this bylaw upholdable, if that's a word. But I mean, I'm just thinking about it in that terms.
Strong language, Macy.
I'm just saying.
Capricious too?
And arbitrary, capricious. Because you have this 12 months. Like I said, people engage in tenancies at will all the time. All the time. It's your property. If you want to rent it out for a month, or you can. You should be able to. And to Liz's point, I can use my primary property for 3 months. Who's going to say that, right? I mean, and that's going to be hopefully larger than the ADU, right? And so you have 5,000, I'm not saying my house is 5,000 square feet, but that's a big party house if you have a 5,000 square foot home and you rent that out with no restrictions. And then meanwhile, you have an ADU that's significantly smaller, and then yet you're so restricted by this arbitrary 12-month period. I am obviously would like to see long-term tenancies in this town. I do. I think it's great. It's good for the community. There's some commitment, even though they may not want to volunteer to be on the warrant committee. But I just think that, you can't say like somebody who's going to be there for 3 months is going to, use a piece of property in a detrimental way. I've seen people in this town use and rent property in very criminal ways. So,
That sounds like a story.
in long-term ways. So I'm
A
just
later
saying, I just think it's
story.
just like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. And that's why I think it's arbitrary. And I don't think that there's, unless there's a justification for it, and I don't see it here.
Yeah, it's a good point, Macy. We have had rental issues in this town.
Yeah,
Big rental issues.
big rental issues.
Of single-family homes.
Oh, yes.
And what they're being utilized for. I know that.
I know that too.
Brian?
Can I just ask a question? I wasn't here Monday, I listened to some of the meetings and not all of it, but they lifted a lot of things from other towns, right? Did they lift
Correct.
this 12-month piece from other towns?
I can't speak to this 12-month, but I know that a vast majority of this language was taken from the state recommended.
Yeah, probably not from the city of Boston, I'm guessing.
No, not from the city of Boston. So I can't say, Brian, but I know that this was model language, but it is a good point. I mean, it's a very valid point.
Yeah, do we know more about the planning board that we trust basically put 12 months in there? Yeah, I'm kind of falling back to, do we trust that they did their homework and this is the number? Town council's going to review it soon? No?
Yes. Town council is going to be reviewing this soon, and I expect an answer on that promptly. Lori had something, and then Andrew.
I was just going to go back to Macy's comment, and if you can do all of that, as you say, and the like month to month and everything, what's to prevent an Airbnb then? Why can't I rent it whenever?
Yeah, you know what? That's an excellent point. I don't think you can. I mean, I don't. Yeah, that's the risk, right? I mean, so if somebody wants to use their home for an Airbnb or a bedroom, let's say, right, without building an ADU, there's no restrictions to that right now. I mean, other than tax implications. I mean, that was a recent thing.
Is that? I don't mean to. I'm interrupting your comments, Jeff, but like is it the city of Boston attempting, or have they curbed Airbnb rentals? Hasn't that been not going to look towards Boston?
I think there was an attempt by the Commonwealth to do that, right? Am I right about that a few years ago? I know that there's tax implications now, and that I think was passed
Okay,
about
that
8
might be-
years
that
ago.
might be right.
About 8 years ago, they started saying you need to report that income and pay taxes on it. So that was the first step. But in terms of restricting Airbnbs, I had not heard that. I know Ubers are being, like they're required being licensed or something.
In some.
Is there, I mean,
Some towns, especially like the vacation ones, they'll have zones.
Yeah.
Where you can have Airbnb in some zones, and some zones you can't.
So it's not outright restricted per
It's
se.
town- I think it's town to town.
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yep.
there's-
yeah. So, as far as I know right now, there's no restrictions in Milton to rent out a room or your top of your garage for an Airbnb. But then you have these ADUs that are being very restricted. So it's almost contrary. I mean, so it's a conflict, with your like Liz said, primary property and then building these ADUs. So, and then imposing a period of rental that's not, that I can see that's justified by anything, legally justifiable.
Andrew and Jay.
The thing I'm really stuck on is that there's no enforcement mechanism
Yeah.
today. So regardless of what that reads, that you can't have Mickey Mouse stay there
Right,
anymore,
that's true.
makes the whole argument over that pointless in my mind, unless you can give it teeth through some mechanism. And then I know putting restrictions on use curbs a homeowner's rights, but in many ways we do that already. I mean, we have laws on setbacks that are arbitrary.
Right.
We have laws about floor to area ratios that are somewhat arbitrary. We
But I
have
think those
height
are-
restrictions.
I think those are justifiable by zoning and codes, building codes. So there's a safety justification for when you're building a structure, egress and ingress. So
Yep.
there's reasons for that. But the time for tenancy, I don't know what the justification is for that. There's no like building codes where there's, safeties and materials, and making a place inhabitable. And even, for town, for aesthetic reasons, right? You have to be from the curb. But like I said, the tenancy, I mean, I haven't heard anything yet. And forgive me, I wasn't here on Monday, so I probably should be the last person talking at this
But the
meeting.
justification in
So-
my mind goes back to the example I talked about. You chose to live next to a high school, what did you expect? This is different in that you chose a home, and then now somebody else is building a structure that's going to have additional cars, additional people living in it, additional traffic. There's no restriction on how many cars a person can own. I could have like 40 cars and park it on the street overnight, even though that's illegal. And so there are things that could materially impact a neighbor. And so it goes back to and the term is not the only thing. The question is, how do you enforce all these and what are the penalties for it? And that for me is the focus area as opposed to length of period. Yes, nobody wants Airbnbs all over town.
That's still an enforceability issue, though. Who's going to determine that it's not a 12-month lease, but it's a
Whether
3
it's legal or not, and for me, it always goes back to the impact on me, and is it fair? And if Tom decides to paint his ADU white, and I hate the color white, do I have a fair argument against it? No. If he decides to paint it glow-in-the-dark pink, and it's light at night, and even though doesn't violate any lighting codes, then yes, it impacts me. And so those are crazy examples, but those are the types of things that I think make a regulation fair or not fair or infringing upon my liberties.
Thank you. Jay.
I do notice that the legislation and the regulations both say a town, I'm paraphrasing, a town can put restrictions, prohibitions on a short-term rental as defined in Chapter 64G. And whenever you have a non-lawyer Googling the law in the middle of a meeting, it's going to be good. So I did that. And Chapter 64G talks about short-term rental, talks about occupancy, and as far as I can tell, it defines that as 31 days. So we've been having a great conversation about values and priorities. It may all be moot if town council says, sorry, 31 days is the most you can
Restrict a
Restrict.
tenancy.
And I'm
So it's
okay
1
with
month.
that.
That'll be up to town council, and I hate to cut off this great philosophical discussion.
I just don't want any more kids in town. No more school-age kids in town.
Well, Jay, I appreciate that, and it's a good conversation no matter what, Jay, because we could save town meeting a lot of time, right? And the people from Milton Cable Access filming it, because they get to go home early. Judy, you get your hand raised?
Well, I did a quick search, as Jay did, and I believe this, the regulations coming through for the ADUs will allow towns to set some sort of restriction. I don't think they're trying to, from what I read quickly, and I, didn't decipher it well, I didn't have enough time, but I think the regulations are going to allow towns to put some length of stay or length of rental into your bylaws. And I'm hoping Macy can you, I think Jay found it, I don't know if you can look at it, I may have found the same thing in a different place.
Yeah, is it the most recent?
Mass.gov.
Yeah, it's the mass.com. Okay, so,
I mean, there's the definition of short-term rental, which wasn't very helpful, but then occupancy is what I've highlighted.
yeah, now I'm just checking to see, make sure this is the most, the latest version. So
Yeah,
so
it's the
out of the
yellow
yeah,
thing.
so it's mass.com. So it's the latest version, and it seems like the only restriction they can put on is a month-to-month lease. So it's 31 days, which is a month, and that's all the town can do. So, and
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
no, thank you for Jay for looking it up, the general laws. So it sounds like anything less than that, right? It's considered to be an Airbnb. So you could have a lease for a month-to-month basis.
I mean, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like 31 days. Well, 31 days is usually, unless it's February, 28 days, 29 days. So it sounds like a month-to-month lease is the only thing a town, a municipality can restrict anything less than 31 days.
Okay.
So that's what it appears based on that. So the 12-month restriction on that bylaw it's contrary to 64G.
Okay. Let me ask everyone, anyone have any more comments about what we've been talking about or anything else in these? Can I ask a funny question? How much would an ADU go for in Milton?
Why are you thinking
Month
about
to
it?
month? How much would it go? How much? I'm just wondering.
Depends on how
Yeah,
big
no,
it is.
2 bedroom.
It can't be bigger than 900 square feet, right?
900 square feet, 2 bedroom.
2 small bedrooms.
So I was just
1,800 bucks, 2,000?
I would say how
Oh,
nice.
God,
Yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Closer to public transportation, I think, because otherwise you have to drive.
Yeah. I know, I was just curious. I was just, as everyone was talking, I was thinking,
Assuming
Depending on
people
how
where it
much would the,
was, I think.
how much?
My cousin's gonna be really.
Yeah! Well, that's how it
You
all
should have charged $3,500.
I don't think he's got that kind of money.
But that's a nice ADU.
I pay my mortgage.
Can I look at
You know,
that?
like I get a couple of those.
Because I wonder if that's the, that was the attempt to restrict Airbnbs.
Julia.
Will people with ADUs be able to rent via the Section 8 housing program?
I don't know.
Just occurred to me. Like, can they take vouchers? I guess, I don't see why not.
I don't,
Anyway.
I don't see why not either. Certainly no restrictions that we can see.
I'm sure Massachusetts would not have allowed.
That
Yeah,
would
to
be
not do that.
insane if Massachusetts passed
Peter.
laws.
Again, you still have the You can put your own requirement on it, I'm not renting it for less than 12 months.
Yeah?
Of course.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, that's a private agreement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's economics.
yeah, that's,
Yeah, of course.
You could even prevent subleasing if you wanted to. You can put anything, yeah, how much you want to collect before and after.
oh, yeah.
No.
Deposits. See, you know.
No cats, no dogs, no children.
You can't say no children.
You can't say no children? You used to be able to say no children, I
Can't say
thought,
no
yeah.
children.
Like, you can't say no Section 8.
Yeah.
Can't say.
Discrimination.
Some things are protected categories, but
There was
other
some
than that,
laws, it was like unmarried women, you can't.
Yes.
Yeah, remember those days?
Yeah,
Yeah,
unmarried
we used to
women.
find these old laws. and we're
let's
like,
not go
horrified.
back to that.
I remember that.
But you can, I think, there's certain age limits, right? Can't you, if there's certain housing that's over 55, over, like, there's some,
There's
yeah.
an exemption for that.
There's exemptions for that, for
over-
ages, yeah. It's a lot of stuff.
But otherwise,
You also can't charge whatever you want for deposits. There's
First and last.
first,
yeah.
last, and security.
you can charge your cousin $7,000 because first, last, and then the
He's thinking like-
security.
Yeah, first, last.
He can't
security.
afford it.
Yeah, no.
After the meeting, drinks are on Peter.
Yeah. Well, I've got to make sure the check cashes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As long as the cousins can.
So there's no more really comments, I guess, as to the language in these two. I want to indicate ADU has not been approved yet by town council. Site plan has. There's obviously a variety of options in terms of voting that we can do. Obviously, I don't know if there's any issues with the site plan in that language, you can vote. As to the ADU, I would say, and this is just on its face, that, you know, if we were to vote, yes or no, it would be a conditional vote on the decision or the recommendation of town council. Or we could make the recommendation now. The only thing that would take is we just have to, whatever town council would have to come back and vote again. I don't know if we want his legal opinion. He might be on the floor of town meeting and people might be asking. And then obviously how we react and what recommendations we make in our comment. So I'm going to leave that open to the committee. And if someone wants to make a motion or do anything else, please do. And that would be, I think, maybe,
Can I ask for guidance for you for how we'll figure out the issues we discussed earlier, like restaurant, no restaurant? How are we as a committee going to make that decision?
someone has to put a motion on the floor.
Do you want to give us guidance?
Jay, what would you do, I guess?
Which one are we
Sure.
talking about?
Site plan.
Site plan, the
Site
agenda
plan.
item, so let me look, pull it up.
Oh, do you have a question? or-
Well, no, I was gonna go for it, see what
I was
happens.
gonna say, go for it. I was gonna pull it up.
Thank you, Lori.
I would make a motion that we approve the site plan approval article as written by the planning board.
Second.
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 Okay.
May I now propose an amendment?
Sure.
Okay. I would like to amend the article before us, and the amendment will be to remove the words in BB3, which say, with the exception of restaurant, bar, or entertainment use. So what I'm trying to do is help the committee decide, do we want to strike those words? Do we want to leave those words in?
Yeah.
I hope I'm helping us make a decision and not just being confusing.
You want to do what?
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, so I don't know if you have the wording in front of you, but it goes back to the discussion we had earlier about restaurants that aren't making any external changes. So the motion before us is the whole thing as the planning board suggested. I'm suggesting an amendment which would remove the words on the first page if you're looking at it, with the exception of restaurant, bar, or entertainment use. So if you vote for my amendment, you're saying, I'm trying not to editorialize. If you vote for my amendment, you're saying we don't want a site plan process to apply to restaurants that aren't changing the exterior. If you vote against my amendment, you're saying we do want a site plan to apply to those.
Accurate.
For voting purposes, I second that.
Okay, that's what
Motion to
I was
amend.
hoping
Thank
that
you.
you were going to
I'm with
second it. Okay.
Okay.
As to the motion on the floor, to strike from the site plan review bylaw, the section B, small b 3, with the exception of restaurant, bar, or entertainment use. Meaning, Jay, that those businesses would not fall under the site plan review.
Yeah, if I may say again, currently, they only get a site plan review if they're changing the exterior. This is saying, even if they don't change the interior, we're going to give them a review. So it's, as proposed by the planning board, it's expanding the things that get a site plan review. And I'm saying let's not make that expansion. But a restaurant that's making a change will still get a review.
Sure. Does everybody understand what we're voting on?
Jay, can you confirm? Is that correct?
Can you say it again? If we vote yes, we want it to stay. We vote no, we want it to go away.
The
Opposite, Judy.
Yes, yes. to
Opposite,
strike it.
thank you.
We're
So,
voting to Jay's friendly
Amendment.
amendment.
To strike subsection B.
so if we say yes, it strikes. If we
Yeah.
say no, it stays.
Correct.
Yes, to
Thank you
strike
so
the
much.
language.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely. Steve?
It's a question. So using the example given the other day, where they're putting a bar in there, right? Which triggered the site review. That Jay's proposed language would remove that from happening, right? So if they do that, they put a bar in there, there's no site review. Is that what you're saying? I'm trying to follow your idea.
As I read it, if the only change you move to your restaurant, you make to your restaurant is within the 4 walls, then you wouldn't get a site plan review.
Oh, okay.
So the one at Milton, whatever you call it, is getting a site plan review because they are making external changes as well as being in a residential.
Yeah, the external.
Bar change
So
is
the
interior.
stairs.
Yeah, the bar change is material.
No, it's interior.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay.
But if with the amendment that Jay proposed, and they didn't do the exterior stairs, it would not get a
Yeah.
site plan approval. They could have 20 seats in the plate and now put in 100 seats. And we
Correct.
wouldn't know.
Correct.
And you live next door.
So I have a question. So as long as they don't make any changes to external, there's no site review, right? That's,
With
In the
this
current
language.
state.
right, within the current language, okay.
Yeah, so this would propose to give language that they would trigger like a review, right? And go to ZBA.
Like, would the building department still review it?
I think they would have skin in that game.
But they wouldn't be looking at, they would be looking at very specific
Yes.
building guidelines.
Correct.
Not, is this right for the town?
No, there's no
Yeah.
policy.
No.
Yeah.
Is it 2 feet or 3 feet? That's all we care about.
Yeah,
Sewage,
exactly.
drainage, they would look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Liz?
Yeah, so to Lori's point, in that particular instance, because of the external stairs, that would have triggered. However, if they hadn't built those stairs, it is true that they have not done any external work on that, where the plate was in the, in that building. What do you call it? The Milton Marketplace.
Yeah.
So, right, because of the stairs, I guess it would have, but without the stairs, if they hadn't built that, it wouldn't. Though it's still, I think it would have still gone before the ZBA, but only after that was agreed upon by the restaurateur and the planning board, so.
Okay. Does everyone know, any questions? Everyone knows, right? We're voting on the amendment to strike the language from section big B. Okay. Ready? Okay, can we call the roll, Karen?
Tom,
No.
Steve,
No.
Lori,
No.
Liz,
No.
Jay,
Yes.
Allison,
No.
Andrew,
No.
Macy,
No.
Julia,
No.
Peter,
No.
Brian,
No.
Ron, Judy.
No?
Motion does not carry.
Thank you. Okay, now we're back to the original motion as written and submitted by the planning board. Liz?
Now, I would like to make an amendment to remove big B, little b, 1, and then you would have to renumber them. Construction, redevelopment, or expansion of multifamily residences and ADUs.
May I make a friendly amendment?
Thank you.
I
Friendly
think you just-
amendment, a friendly amendment to,
I think you just meant the word "and ADUs."
Yes, thank you. And ADUs. Leave number 1. Thank you.
you still don't have to fix the numbering.
Leave the numbering
That's,
alone.
that's big. No, the-
I'm unclear, which?
This is B.
B, little b, number 1. So now, number 1 would read, construction, redevelopment, or expansion of multifamily residences, semicolon. Get rid of and ADUs.
Okay.
Somebody got, that's what I moved to do.
Okay.
Got to second that motion or don't?
To, seconded? Seconded by Macy. So, Liz?
Yeah.
Your motion, just so we're clear, is section B, little d, subsection 1, strike and ADUs.
Yes.
Okay. Do a vote? Any questions, concerns? We understand what the motion is before the floor. Okay, Karen, could you call the roll?
Just gonna share it.
Oh, thank you, I'm sorry.
Second. There you go.
Too fast.
Okay. Tom,
No.
Steve,
No.
Lori,
No.
Liz,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Allison,
No.
Andrew,
No.
Macy,
No.
Julia,
Yes.
Peter,
No.
Brian,
No.
Ron,
No.
Judy.
No?
The motion does not carry.
Thank you, Liz. Okay, we're back to the original motion as submitted by the planning board, site plan review. Does anybody want to speak any further to that motion or the article in general? Jay?
I think this is a great article. I really want to see it passed. And I hope that the warrant committee will not only vote in favor of it tonight, but will, through our comment written in the article, written in the, where will we write a comment?
We will write it on a green sheet.
On a green sheet.
Are you
and-
volunteering?
And
Get your passion.
And through our chairs getting up and speaking at the town meeting. Complicate. You've seen what we've talked about. Imagine 250 people talking about this. Complicated zoning things can lead to anarchy in town meeting, which then lead to them failing. I'm hoping that we shepherd this to a smooth sailing at town meeting.
Thank you for those words, Jay.
Pressure's on.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, here we go. Karen, could you call the rolls, please?
Sure. Tom,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Jay,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Macy,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Ron, Judy.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Yes. Thank you, members. We're going to move to the ADU article now. Before I ask for a motion, would anyone like to speak further to this article? Any concerns or questions about it? Seeing no hands raised, would the committee like to put this matter to a vote? Looks like I got some heads nodding.
I move to pass as is.
Okay, Brian has a motion to pass the ADU bylaw as submitted by the planning board.
Okay. I move to amend.
Oh, okay.
Don't you need a second?
Yeah, we need to.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, then
I should have said something.
somebody else.
Brian has a motion to accept the article as written and submitted by the planning board.
Second.
Allison's got a second.
I was
Liz.
so eager. I'm so sorry. Okay. So anyway, I move to amend section.
Don't we have to vote on that now
you
that
do
we've
the first
seconded it? And if it doesn't, then she can amend, like, we've already, they've already made the motion and I've seconded it.
This would be a friendly amendment.
It's a friendly amendment.
C. What is it? C, 7, to remove the language, an ADU may not be rented for periods of less than 12 months at a time. I would change it to say an ADU so I would get rid of may not be rented for periods of less than 12 months at a time. I would change it to say an ADU is prohibited from being rented on a weekly or daily basis. The ADU shall not be used for boarding and lodging or other commercial use, is how I would have it read. I would just take out, for the reasons we discussed earlier, may not be rented for periods less than 12 months at a time, and.
So it could be rented monthly.
So,
You said weekly or daily, right?
It's prohibited from being
yeah, I was
rented
going to
weekly or daily.
suggest mirroring the language from
That's fine.
64G and
That's fine
saying
with
less than 31.
Thank you. That's fine with me.
That's my
I'm
suggestion.
going to say cite to the statute.
Yeah, that's what I was going to
Pursuant to.
suggest it. So do you want me to
Okay.
make the friendly amendment to that? or
Please,
do you
friendly
want-
Okay,
amendment.
so you're going to withdraw
Yes,
your friendly
do.
amendment.
yes.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Liz has withdrawn.
Okay,
Do I hear any other friendly amendments?
I have a friendly
Macy.
amendment.
thank you.
So I propose that, as a friendly amendment, that section C, subsection 7, where it refers to an ADU may not be rented for periods less than 12 months at a time, that the 12 months be struck from subsection 7 and add 31 days, which mirrors the language under chapter 64G, which is 31 days.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
We're assuming that 31 days is actually correct and that town council is going to come to the same conclusion. Why would we vote on it without knowing the answer?
This particular section already refers to chapter 64G, and it is defined as 31 days for tenancy. It cannot be less than 31 days pursuant.
Regardless of what that refers to, until council has come back to us with a definitive answer, why are we voting at all?
I second that.
I
Well,
second that.
because Macy put
Third.
it forth.
Well, yeah, we have a motion now,
Nice,
or being
second that
proposed.
Yeah.
Okay, but what is the motion? So the motion, you've stated it, Karen has it up on the screen.
Not yet.
Okay,
Can we discuss a little bit?
sure.
So there's a question about the legality of that. That's what you're basing this on, if it can be 31 days, right? So we're not really sure. I do agree. I think we should get the town council's opinion on that before we vote on it. I think we should be sure. We'll get a town council opinion. That's what I think. I mean, we should all be sure about it.
I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying, why not wait for the final legal answer?
It does mention that short-term rentals, as defined by Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 64G, Section 1, which is the definition section of that particular chapter. And it defines a short-term rental as anything less than 31 days. So, I mean, you could let town council do it.
Well, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
it's,
So
I mean-
we could be coming back
Yeah, we
one
could come
way
back
or another,
on the
right?
31 days.
I mean, we're going to have to, if town council says this is no good, we're going to, or the other way around, we're going to have to come back.
Yeah,
Our
well, the
proposition.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no. No, I'm done.
If the planning board did lift this from other towns that were approved by the AG, then we might be okay with it. We might not be okay with it, but we might know it's okay for this state.
Okay, Macy, then Liz.
So, I don't work for the Attorney General's office, but what I do know is that this particular article refers to this particular chapter, which defines what a short-term rental is. And that 12-month period is in direct contradiction of what's defined under that particular general law. So with that said, I don't know what kind of review went through with the Attorney General's office. I'm not sure. I don't know whether Chapter 64G and the definitions therein were reviewed and applied. But just on face value, reading a statute that seems to be in effect and hasn't been recently amended and is referred to in this particular proposed bylaw, that 12-month period appears to me on its face to be in contradiction of an existing law in the Commonwealth. That's it. So
I get that.
yeah, so I mean, you could allow town council to review it, and that's fine. But based on the face of reading this particular bylaw, it is in contradiction of an existing law in Massachusetts. That's it. Yeah.
Liz, then Ron.
I have a procedural question.
Yeah.
If one were to ask town council before we vote on this entire bylaw, can we specifically reference to town council the thing that we're concerned about? Because
Yeah, we can send him an email and say.
I would
this
like to
is
know
what
about
we're
this
concerned about.
specifically.
Yeah.
If we're going to defer,
In fact, no matter what we did tonight, I would be sending that
To him
anyway, saying this is what we talked about. We're looking to amend this language. Can you take a closer look and give us because we're fine maybe with the rest of it. It's this thing that we have a problem with pursuant to the statute that reads 31 as opposed to 12.
I'm not confident just because other towns have passed this bylaw that it's legal. That's all I'm saying.
No, and
that-
I don't,
That's all I'm saying. And maybe I'm wrong.
Does that make sense?
Reading it.
yes, are you going to move forward with that motion or?
It seems like for efficiency's sake, that perhaps we should let town council review it and then have another set of eyes on it and then bring it back to us. So, I mean, what do you think, Chair?
Yeah, that would be fine. We could vote on it as written and submitted, get the opinion of town council, and we can bring it back. Or we can just wait and not vote on this one at all.
yeah, that's my,
I think-
that was
Okay.
the only, and I'm not disagreeing with you. My question is only why would we vote on an article that we believe to be defective in language?
And have town council have a stab at it.
Yep. And that's,
come back.
And so if there's a good reason to do it, let's
We
vote
just-
if there is.
just be mindful, I might have to call like a meeting just to vote on this. Like I might be dragging you in for like a 20-minute thing, but and I'm fine with that. That's what we have to do. That's why a lot of people don't want to be in the warrant committee. So I just want those expectations of the board that we anything's possible and we can do it.
Can you
You
be the
know-
only one in the room? We all join by Zoom?
Yes,
Oh, come on.
Jay and I will come. Lori will come, I know.
So, okay,
Yes.
okay, so we still have a motion on the floor right
So
now.
I'll remove the motion,
Okay, so Macy's going to withdraw
withdraw my motion.
her amendment. Okay, so now we're really back to square one again. I see Ron with a comment.
I was gonna propose a friendly amendment to your friendly amendment. Rather than specify the date, we can just refer to short-term rentals.
Yes.
Whatever that, I guess, interpreted as, next year it could be 33 days, who cares? We would just say it cannot be used for short-term rentals.
Pursuant to Chapter 64,
That- as defined,
Section 1.
sorry, it's a defined term. So that way, we don't need to come back to, most likely, if town council says the wording as submitted is improper, the amendment should be proper, because the amendment would be subject to the definition.
I think that's an excellent proposal.
Now, it is.
But
I'm kind of a little, I know,
Can I say something?
Sure, Brian.
That's already the law, state law anyways, short-term rentals. It's part of the whole ADU thing in the state. But I think we should find out from the planning board why they put this in here and where it came from. I'd like to see if they can, just not get a whole blow by blow.
I think they explained
Just
it.
that
I don't think
piece.
I think we asked about it
Yeah.
Monday. They were like, oh, for the same reasons, they don't want short-term rentals to proliferate in the town and get out of control. But I don't think they They didn't have much more beyond that.
I'd be curious if they lifted it from
Can
somewhere
we bring them
else.
back?
That's my biggest
Yeah,
question.
we can do all of those things. We can vote, we can not vote, we can bring them back, we can inquire, wait till town council. I mean, all of these are possibilities. I think though, frankly, as I'm hearing all of this, it might be better to let town council make the decision and then we just vote. And then we can do whatever we want. At that point, we can amend, we can recommend, we can do whatever. It just creates, this makes tonight a little easier.
Also on a clean record of it, too.
Yeah, exactly.
I have another procedural question.
Liz?
If town council were to determine that Macy is correct and that 31 days is the shortest amount of time by which you can limit it, could then the planning board decide to change their language if they wanted to? Or because it's already kind of too late in the process, are they not able to do that anymore? I mean, I know that they changed the language the other night. I would like to give them an opportunity
Does
to
this
weigh in
change the
one way or the
scope?
other.
Does this change the scope of the article? That's the question.
Oh,
I think it has to come from our recommendation from this point on. Even those
Okay.
changes that were made the other night, we're gonna have to reprint in our comment, your comment, not ours. So that whole article is gonna be in your comment with those changes, like
okay,
even the grammatical ones.
okay,
Okay.
Unless they reopen the entire warrant, but
Right.
only the select board can do that.
okay.
You all set?
Yep.
So,
Ron?
so if we
Yes.
don't take a vote, we need to remove the motion.
That's right.
on-
That was-
Yes.
we're- If Brian
Oh,
wants
oh,
to.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, hold that thought, Jay.
A couple things to what was just said a second ago about, isn't it state law anyway? The state law and the regulations say towns may prohibit short-term rental pursuant to MGL 64G. So a town might say Airbnbs are just fine. So we do want to put something in here saying, I loved what Ron said, restrict it per MGL 64G. But if we're not ready to do that tonight, there was a earlier question tonight, which was, what do we prefer? And I heard people around this table and on Zoom, some people would prefer the 12-month rent, forget the law for a second. Some people on this committee would prefer the 12-month rental. Some people on this committee would prefer did we settle on a number? Was it 6? Was it less than 6? Let's say.
It really wasn't.
Less than 12.
Ah, boy. Let's say 6. Some people on this
Less than
committee
12,
would
more than 3.
Some people on this committee would prefer, let's swing for the fences, 3-month restriction. Should we take a vote to figure out where we stand on that? I mean, because otherwise, like, let's say town council says, no, it doesn't apply. The 31 days thing doesn't apply. We still would have to decide among ourselves, do we like 12? Do we like 3? Do we like 6?
I think we cross that bridge when we come.
Yeah.
I agree.
I do too, I agree.
See, I feel like it's all in our brains so fresh. Now's the perfect time to vote, no?
No.
Yeah,
Why don't we go back
Jay,
to
I love the spirit. Julie makes a great point. Yeah, I think we're well on our way, and I think we come to an easy consensus as to that. I'm the chair. I think the point that Macy brought forward is a very valid one, and one we should be thinking about, and it very well may be the ultimate. It may be how the article reads. So, that being said,
The only other thing I'd ask town council is if they are able to, is there a legal way to put it in enforcement mechanism? On whatever we decide.
okay, that's fair. We can do that.
And if we can't, then what's the point?
Yeah.
He wouldn't put the definition of enforced procedures.
Oh, he wouldn't. Like
He
town
said
council
we're
would.
allowed to.
Yeah, he said we're allowed to, but he wouldn't.
Or
I mean, he
who
can't, he can,
who can we?
We do in the recommendation.
Yeah, we can, but ultimately town meeting, if our planning board or the others do not.
We put it in the recommendation
That there be an enforcement
that there
mechanism.
be, and whatever he says the enforcement mechanism could be, then we could decide that that's what we want to do, and we could put that in there.
With
And I
the-
think that's a good question to
What are the
ask.
legal enforcement
And
mechanisms?
I think that's a good question to ask him as well.
With the caveat that it can't be beyond the scope of what was printed in the warrant. The moderator or town council might say, the town got a warrant. It said this. It said nothing about enforcement. Therefore, you can't vote on things at town meeting that are beyond the scope of what's printed in the warrant, which is sometimes hard to tell, but that may be an issue.
Ryan?
Some towns, businesses have to file the leases with the towns, and they do it for valuation of the property.
That's commercial.
I don't know if that happens in Milton. Maybe
Yeah,
not.
that's commercial.
Some businesses here, but, but maybe you could always do that, but that's. they
That's a
do
good
for
point.
assessments practices.
Oh, that's a good point. Okay.
Motion to dismiss?
No, we're not there yet. Is there someone?
Does he need to withdraw? or
Yes,
before-
can we put up on the screen what you had written, Karen? For us, please? So everybody can see it.
Sorry, give me 1 second. That's what we were last, I believe. No?
Okay. Okay, so, yeah, what do you want to do?
Just put chocolate in
Just to be clear, I think Macy proposed but that was never seconded.
Mhm. So,
This is the last made and seconded motion.
I'm withdrawing my,
Yeah, that was you withdrew it.
I withdraw, yeah.
Liz?
Do we need to move to, because there is a motion to
We don't have to vote
this
on
one.
this.
Okay.
So I'd like to withdraw
Yeah.
my motion.
Yeah. So that's
Thank you.
fine.
Ron, you're up.
Yeah.
You're up.
Okay, so the slate is clean.
Okay.
You're up.
The slate is clean.
Over.
Go for it.
Okay, now we do have the overlay,
Okay.
but we have the site plan right now. Are we,
Didn't we already vote on
excuse,
that?
What's the?
oh no,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
The-
We do just have the overlay.
Yeah.
Karen.
O-
Okay.
Overlay?
The map,
map.
straightforward. So
Okay, didn't we already vote on that?
No, because
No.
it wasn't on the agenda, remember?
That's right,
Oh.
yeah.
Right.
Let's
Yes.
vote.
Now it is.
Motion to vote on the overlay.
Andy's got a vote to motion on the overlay.
I second
Seconded by Liz.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, this would be a motion to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning map to include the Milton Village Plan Unit Development and Brook Road Overlay District as described in the articles as printed and submitted by the planning board. These concern the Milton Village Mixed-Use Plan Unit Development Boundary and also the Brook Road Overlay District potential parcels. This was a previously approved zoning bylaw amendment by town meeting. This is these maps contained within the article must be included. Otherwise, the amendment to our overlay is not in effect. So this is pursuant to state law. So this article would amend the zoning map to add these two plan unit developments to the zoning map at the recommendation of town council. So those are our two maps. Karen?
Tom,
Yes.
Steve,
I'm sorry, come back to me, please, sorry.
Lori,
Yes.
Liz,
Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to find
Jay?
it on here.
Yes.
Thanks.
Allison,
Yes.
Sorry.
Allison,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
Macy,
Yes.
Julia,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
and Judy.
Yes?
And Steve.
Oh, and Steve?
Yes, sorry.
The motion passes.
Okay, another unanimous vote. Okay, so we have one of these left that we're gonna ask town council about and have him opine on and tell us if we're right, if Macy's right.
No, we're right.
Okay, I was hoping just to get through these three. This is not a bad thing at all. We have plenty of time, and I think I think the committee made a great decision. So thank you very much. Future planning, I want to move on to. I've been in conversation with the select board member, in terms of our lighting bylaw submitted by the select board. We would be able to have a speaker as to that on the 18th of February. Okay, so that's a Tuesday. It's the earliest we could have someone in. Okay. As to our citizens' petitions, I have not, in my search throughout the town government, and through some people on the select board who are trying to help out, I've yet to find someone willing to come forward to speak to these, or one per each, someone to each article. I will continue. I've asked a couple of people within town government, select board, to help me out, see if someone can come forward. It would be very helpful, I think, to kind of get the behind the curtains look at, the meaning behind this, what the conversation was like, why. Those are all very important things. Citizens petitions, we usually have someone come in. Sometimes, my experience, maybe we haven't. Have we?
We have.
We have, yeah.
Yes.
So, that's it. So so citizens petitions and lighting bylaw are left.
I have a question. Is it usually a petitioner that comes in and
Yes.
speaks?
Yeah.
Okay.
The citizen who wrote it.
Right, so and we're unable to obtain.
Just as of now, no one's really come forward. There are a lot of names on it, and other
saw that.
other members of town government have inquired, and I think the response has been no, you don't want to come in, or the people who are asked. I'm not speaking this as hearsay. I have no idea. It's just that that's what I'm trying to do, committee, because I think it would be very helpful. Julia?
Are we going to get to hear from town council about the citizens petition about the planning board article in particular, since they said to talk to town council?
Yeah, I'm in the process right now via email and with the town administrator making arrangements for town council to come in and speak to those.
Okay.
So I'm expecting like a big week next week in terms of trying to finish these up if we can. I don't know as to the lighting bylaw. I'd really like to hear. I think we'd benefit from hearing from a select board member on that one. So that one would probably be the last. I'd like to finish up this last planning board article and the citizens petitions next week. So I'm eyeing for town council to come in, and maybe we can kind of address all of these. I still want to have the meetings next week. I think at the very least on Wednesday, we can still talk about the lighting. We can still have a conversation if the warrant committee wants to about our initial thoughts and feelings about them. I always find that it's very helpful to have a speaker in. I feel that kind of moves the discussion along, but I'm going to be working to figure this all out for you. So our meetings are as scheduled. I will be keeping you up to date. I do have some materials concerning the citizens petition for the law license appropriation. If I can do it tonight, I'll forward it to you tonight or tomorrow. But in the next couple of days, I just have some statutes and some other materials just for you to look at that just kind of give a background to it.
Sorry.
Not to take the place of a speaker, like I've been doing throughout our term, just kind of sending you stuff from that, information just so you can read and be up to speed on it.
Sorry, is this a third citizens petition?
No, it's the one for the law license, for the legal appropriation.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So that it's just background stuff. I think it'd be helpful for you.
Tom, can I ask a question?
Sure, Andrew.
You said as scheduled. Did I miss something? We already
Did
have.
we already post? Did we already post? We didn't post out through the month. Did we?
Not for next week, that was going to, I was confirming. So
Oh.
we're doing Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, is that correct?
I had Monday, Tuesday, Thursday for us next week. I'm sorry, Karen.
Okay.
I had Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I out of an abundance of caution.
And I also have I don't know if anybody else has this, but I have a Zoom meeting scheduled for like multiple days.
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
I have that
Is
too.
there,
I need to ask about that. Lori
Yeah.
pointed it out to me and then I
Okay.
noticed it.
I
I think
get,
it's just to their ability to
calling
use
in?
the same link for,
I think we have the link
To not
every
have to-
night and
yeah.
it sends us.
to not have to send out
Okay.
separate links
hadn't
each
noticed
time.
it.
because it does throw me off.
Yeah.
okay.
On Saturday night, when I was supposed to be at the Warrant Committee.
No, I saw it once and I was like, this isn't a Zoom. You know,
Just make,
Okay, so what I'm asking members of the committee to do is just check your town email. I know the authentication's a pain in the neck, but please just check the email and just to see. If I can't get anybody from Monday, I don't want to waste anybody's time. So May means you might have to readjust for the end of the week, and I'm sorry if that's a hardship, but I want to get the most out of our time and then get these comments in. We have until the beginning of the following week to submit those comments, so I'm mindful of that also. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that? I'm just trying to get the most bang for our buck. Town council, town administrator, citizens potentially, any petitioner who signed that and is knowledgeable enough to come before the board and speak and articulate the reasons behind, and any other questions we may have, I would invite them in. And you can, if any member of this board knows someone of this committee, reach out to me and I will connect with them and we will have a conversation. We'll see if that can happen. But Liz.
I have a question. So you said Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, next week.
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
oh, you
Monday,
said Monday,
you said Monday,
Thursday.
Tuesday,
I
Thursday.
think I said that. That was me. I'm sorry.
It's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday? Oh,
Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
okay. And so, okay, I'll move. Not Tuesday and not Friday then, okay. And then the idea would be Monday would be who? Maybe someone from the
Town
citizens?
council or town administrator, I want both.
Okay, and then Wednesday,
You vote,
and then Thursday,
maybe no meeting.
okay. Well, maybe if there's
Yeah,
someone
I
that's
just
for the
wanna-
citizens, but, okay.
Yeah, I
But
just want
we'll
to,
reserve those days.
I just
Okay.
want to schedule them. I want to get them, pursuant to the open meeting law. I just want them out there. Doesn't mean we have to have them. Like I said, I'm trying to make the most use of our time. We're going to have a really busy, after this town meeting, it's going to get really busy here. So, thank,
This hasn't been busy.
audible sigh.
No.
Okay, Jay?
Yeah, I think I would like to talk about the lighting bylaws next week if possible,
Sure.
even before we have somebody come in, because the following week is school vacation.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yep.
think I'll be joining those meetings. I
Okay.
may, but I probably won't be. so.
Yeah.
I actually have a question. Were the bylaws regarding lighting distributed? Because I couldn't find it in the email. Were they sent out or, because I can't.
I'll get you that later.
That'd be great, 'cause, yeah,
Does
I-
everybody have everybody have
I
everything?
wanna
It's a Word attachment, right?
find it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will get it.
Meeting
Okay, so
documents.
everyone has the materials.
I have all the ones we.
Okay, anyone have any?
Aaron Bradley.
Motion to adjourn.
Brian has a motion.
A second.
Seconded.
Third.
Third, all in favor? Aye. Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, Warrant Committee. Thank you, members of the public.
Thank you, Chairman.